All right, Vladimir, if you don't end that war in Ukraine in 50 days, I'm going to do something very strong.
Oh, God, this again. Okay, right, cool.
What's that? Cool? I'll show you cool. Now you have 10 days. Okay, maybe 12.
Love it. Can't wait.
Okay, that's it.
Ow! Holy shit! Why did you hit me? Why did you hit me?
Look, somebody's going to pay the price for Vladimir not listening to me, and it's not going to be me, all right?
But he is also helping Russia. More than I'd like to, less than I could.
Yeah, well, but he's, he and I were talking. It's a little, it's more complicated. It's, look, I'm just glad we're not talking about Jeffrey Epstein, huh?
That is the funniest. Jesus Christ. Mark, turn me on to that. That is the funniest thing in the world. I sat here and laughed my ass off royally at that. Good morning, Jamal Thomas. This is the morning show. I apologize. I'm running a bit late this morning. I had a doctor's appointment and it took me a bit while. Those Muppets, it will make your day. It will make your day. It would honestly make your day. Regardless of how bad your day is, that will make your day. No, man, I hope all of you are doing well. I hope everyone is doing great. I do not have time to go into the basic monologue today, but we're going to get the opportunity to talk to various people. Arno is going to be here. Maloof is going to be here. Carl Zha is coming on in a few minutes. Sabby Sabs is going to be here. So we have a damn good show for you today. It's a good, full show. I would say one thing. That ended up being true. So Trump, or let's say JD Vance, I think this is the video of it. Forgive me. Like I said, I'm running behind today, so I didn't have the time to pull up all of the spots that I wanted. I think this is it though. If she has a voice.
Because he's not afraid to put significant tariffs on countries like India for buying Russian oil. Are you going to do a similar move to China as well? They're also buying Russian oil.
Well, the president said he's thinking about it, but he hasn't made any firm decisions.
So the president said he's thinking about it. He hasn't made any firm decisions about it. He's thinking about it. Oh, you didn't see it. God damn it. Let's try it again. Let's try this again. There we are. Who puts music to this stuff? It freaks me out.
Obviously, the China issue is a little bit more complicated because our relationship with China.
I hope you heard her. I got to play it again. Let me play it again. I hate it when they put music to it. It freaks me out.
The president's efforts on trade and tariffs because he's not afraid to put significant tariffs on countries like India for buying Russian oil. Are you going to do a similar move to China as well? They're also buying Russian oil.
Well, the president said he's thinking about it, but he hasn't made any firm decisions. Obviously,
President said he's thinking about it. He hasn't made any firm decisions on that, because after all, we get rare earths. We tried to have a tariff war with them once before. It didn't work all that well. And, a military and everything else kind of runs on those rare earths and the processes of those rare earths. And as we said, we had a trade war with them once before and they didn't back down. So, yeah, it's kind of complicated. Modi, he can get it. Modi can get it. Modi is fair game. That seems to be they're looking at it. He is the weak link. And as the weak link, they can go after Modi. China, not so much. China, not so much. Now, your humble host over and over again said, show me, do it. Your humble host didn't believe for a moment that they would get back into another trade war with China. Maybe India. Since they had already put like 50% on India, anywhere 25 to 50% on India, 50% on Brazil, yes. But again, my curiosity was, show me. I want to see it. That is going to be a fascinating thing. So apparently they went after one. He didn't necessarily go after the other. And even in going after the one with India, it was like 20% of what they do. as opposed to the entirety of India's economy with the United States. So there's that. So a lot of this is theater on some level, and the other one is just Taco Trump being Taco Trump. There is that. A bluff. A bluff. The other thing I want to get to, and I can't go into the entirety of it, the more that I think about this peace talks, as they call it, the more I don't know what they're getting out of this, right? Like, I understand Putin going with this notion of he's very diplomatic. So he's going to go and be the diplomat, and he's going to try to make Trump not look bad. He's going to probably try to help him save face if he could help him save face. But ultimately, do you really see him deviating on the main items? And the way the media in the United States is talking about it, US media is talking to itself, and with European media. They're just having a conversation with each other. And when I read articles like from Reuters and whatnot, I think I even point out, okay, who is this anonymous source? Why are they pretending as if this person knows what's in the mind of Putin or in the mind of his generals? These people are probably just Americans. And so Europe, the US, are just having a conversation with one another. We're going to do land swaps. We're going to trade this, and they're going to trade that. And maybe we could trade this, and maybe we can get Putin to do that. And then you would get European leaders saying, well, you shouldn't allow Putin to do so-and-so. You get Zelensky. Well, we're not going to do this. And then he softens his language because he talks to the European leaders, and it was like, hey, it looks bad when you're being that aggressive. And Donald Trump is going to be very pissed off at you and be that aggressive. So you need to mute your language in a moment and be more diplomatic about this stuff, even though at the end of the day, you're going to play spoiler. Anyway, this war, special military operation, was not about land swaps. Period. This war was not about land swaps. The entire point was that they're expanding NATO to the border of Russia. That was the issue. That was the prevailing and main issue. And that they were trying to use Ukraine to drag it into NATO, be it de facto or in fact, and use it in the way that they're using it now as a battering ram against the Russian government or the Russian countryside. Kalis, that lunatic, beautiful but dumb, will come out and say something like, we need to break Russia up into X number of places because she has a tiny country, Estonia, and she feels size insecurity with the size of Russia. Go sit down. You have no power in this process. Europe has no power in this process. Europe was effectively calling Donald Trump, talking to his secretary, trying to figure out what the plan was because they didn't know. And to be honest, I'm not even certain that Donald Trump knows entirely what the plan is going into it. It sounds like something was offered. Some people are saying that Witkoff got it wrong. Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. I don't get the sense, though, that Putin would go into a meeting if the context of the meeting hadn't been decided in advance. Maybe, but that's a hard buy for me in this case. Put that to the side for the moment. I haven't heard anyone in the West mention NATO once. Maybe in an article somewhere. But if you're listening to the blogosphere and the talking head sphere, it's all about swaps. What can we swap? What are we going to swap? How are we going to swap this? How are we going to swap that? Nothing is coming out of the Russian side. If you've noticed, they haven't said squat. I've been looking at the Russian media. I haven't seen anything that they've come out with a comment on this issue at all. It's for the most part been stonewall. We will have our conversation when we go and talk to Donald Trump. That's a little disconcerting, right? And on top of that, if Donald Trump is really believing, well, I'm just going to swap some land. Okay, what are you going to swap? Why should Russia have to give you anything? You're losing. The loser doesn't get to dictate terms. And not just the loser doesn't get to dictate terms. You overthrew a country provoking this war in the first place. Let's be very clear. Ukraine was a civil war that evolved in a case where Russia gets involved in order to secure its own interests. That's what it was. You had the US, Europe backing one side with Russia backing the Russian-speaking side. It was that. All of this talk about Russia just invaded for willy-nilly reasons, and then Europe and the United States come up and construct a monument of lies in order to justify or at the very least hide their own responsibility in regards to it. It's outrageous. But that is what they're still going with, is Europe acting as if, well, this is just about land because Russia just wanted land. No, it was not. The other part to this that's super interesting to me has to do with this idea of what are they going to get? Meaning, Putin's demands are not necessarily maximalist, not really. Hey, if you want a ceasefire, we can do that. These regions are part of the Russian Federation, and so you need to leave Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporozhye, Kherson. You need to leave. These are ours. Now, the rub is, and the reason that Donald Trump is doing this is because what Donald Trump knows is if this keeps going on the battlefield, they're going to take Donbass anyway. So it's better to get ahead of it, to try to at the very least save some level of face, as opposed to the radical humiliation that's about to take place on the battlefield in the coming months. That's what he knows. The Ukrainian military looks like it's about to collapse. And it looks like it's about to collapse probably sooner than I think many people think, including analysts. It looks bad. The situation looks like it's getting worse and worse by the day. The speed at which they're moving through these regions is increasing, as opposed to taking months to take down many of these cities. These cities are falling faster. We'll see. I could be wrong on that front. I guess the main point that I would make here is, what deal do you really think you can make with the United States and Donald Trump? It's that part. That's the part that I'm confused by. I don't know what that deal would be. The US, when it had the opportunity, overthrew a government that was that. One second. Overthrew a government that was that. After overthrowing that government, went on with this idea that it was, come on. Went with the idea that this was a revolution of dignity, at the point where deals were being made in order to, when deals were being made in order to kind of come up with this kind of thing of like, okay, well, how do we resolve this? Instead, you ended up with Minsk 1, 2, Istanbul agreements, all of which were effectively blown off. How do you make deals with people like this? And you can go down the list. They attempted to get Georgia into the war, finally got Ukraine into the war. They went back with Georgia again at the point where you had the French representative. Well, she wasn't representative, I'll be fair to her. The French spy, the spook, that was president of Georgia, who was effectively working against the government with the European Union in order to overthrow that government. They tried to create a second front against Russia when they realized that Ukraine wasn't working. Okay, so you had that failed. Then you had the attacking Iran in the middle of negotiations when you pointed out that you would not do that. Now, the reason I'm adding that in is because it goes to this notion of radical dishonesty. I mean, hell, you can even talk about Soleimani, where he was effectively going somewhere for a peace summit, and they murdered him, knowing that he was going for a quote-unquote peace summit. I'm trying to point out that the level of flagrant dishonesty that's built into doing something like that, where you're trying to have a decapitation strike and overthrow a government, would that have been to the benefit or detriment of Russia and China if you were able to accomplish your objective? Obviously, to the detriment. And yet, Trump did it. Not 20 years ago, a few months ago, we were here together as that was taking place. And the other thing that I want to hit, Azerbaijan and Armenia. Now, that's a much bigger deal than I've seen people make of it. For all intents and purposes, let me pull up a map just so you can see what I mean by this. All right. They are talking about putting a quarter. Let's see if Carl was still joining me. Right here. They are talking about putting a quarter, and if that wasn't insane enough, naming it after Donald Trump. But notice what this quarter connects. I think they call it the Nachian region here with Azerbaijan. All right, going through Armenia in order to do it. Iran sits right here, and this borders Russia, no less. All right, so let's flip this, share this one instead. All right. Okay, I need you to go away. And if you look at the map, Russia is right here. So at the exact same time that Donald Trump is claiming to want a deal, claims he wants a deal, because I don't think he wants a deal. I think the US president wants to freeze the conflict. Those things are different. One tries to resolve an issue. The other one tries to postpone an issue until you're in a better situation where you can effectively exploit that issue, a la Syria, for example. At the exact same time that Donald Trump is claiming to want a deal, you get Azerbaijan and Armenia coming together under America's tutelage in order to sign an agreement of their own, with an extra bonus in that agreement that they are going to lease that quarter to America for like 99 years. That's amazing. Not to mention strategic partnership and cooperation with the United States. This right here, were the two prime ministers shaking it out, Pashinyan and Aliyev.
Azerbaijan and the Prime Minister of the Republic of Armenia will now sign the joint declaration on the outcomes of the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity Summit.
That's really
They will
beautiful.
sign 3 copies in English. The President of the United States signs as a witness to the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan and the Prime Minister of the Republic of Armenia, affirming their path to peace, stability, and prosperity. We kindly ask that all guests remain seated for the signing of the documents.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So let's just to go back for a bit. NATO expansion was the main trigger point for this war. Yes, they murdered 14,000 ethnic Russian Ukrainians. And yes, they were effectively attacking and building up this massive military on the Russian border. All of that's true. But the issue was NATO expansion. It was the NATO expansion that effectively got to the border of Ukraine, put in CIA and all of the other stuff, overthrew the government of Yanukovych. It's that. So while you are supposedly making a deal, and Putin has been very consistent the entire way through, there is no deal unless it deals with the practical realities on the ground and what caused the war. Full stop. He said it from the beginning. He hasn't deviated from it. I know they're acting like, oh my God, we don't know what Putin wants. He's been very clear the entire way through. So during a negotiation that Putin is obviously going to bring up that very specific point, that this is about NATO expansion, you sign a deal that once again hit and gets near the Russian border. Ain't that something? Ain't that special? Ain't that special? I hope you get my point, right? I'm trying to make the very basic point that how on earth are you going and trying to get a quote unquote deal when you are also back dealing to, let's say, get at Russia in a different way on another front? And again, let's be very clear about that. Azerbaijan and Russia have been at odds over the past several months, maybe longer than that, but definitely it's heated up over the past several months. Russia blew up one of their factories. You had the situation where those drones, Operation Spiderweb, that hit Russia, it's believed might have came out of Azerbaijan, or at the very least a truck came through or from Azerbaijan. The same thing, by the way, that hit Iran when Iran was in the war with Israel. These things are not coincidence. I hope you get my point. I'm saying that it seems to be that there's another front opening using Armenia and Azerbaijan. Larry Johnson even made the point of saying that they believe that there's secret protocols in the memos or in the deals that would allow them to get into NATO. Who knows? I don't even think you need that. You only need the cooperation in and of itself with the West. And you have to think to yourself, what was agreed upon in order to get the deal, right? What did Trump want? What did both sides want? Was it a closer cooperation with the West? Maybe, considering Armenia is talking about getting out of the CSTO. So you have another axis that seems to be forming against Russia, signed and pushed by Donald Trump, while at the exact same time, in a losing war, he is supposedly working with the Russians in order to bring down hostilities, the hostilities being perpetuated by the expansion of NATO. It's just outrageous, right? The reason I call this the grand deception is not because I think Putin is unaware, and nor do I think the people that are around Trump are unaware. In fact, I don't know if Trump even knows where he is. All things being equal, Trump goes in and he says his lines with the people around him, effectively pushing him, kind of like Joe Biden, from my point of view. If they didn't give him a coloring book with stencils, then I don't think he knows entirely what's going on. I think what he knows is, oh my God, this is going to look bad and humiliating when it fails. And I'm not a loser, and I don't want this to fail on my watch. So I need to go and make a deal. That's why I went from 50 to 10 to, oh my God, let's talk. It was a bluff. He didn't have the cards. As the Muppet pointed out, you don't have the cards. You don't have the cards. He didn't have the cards. There was that. It's not that I think the public, or let's say it's not that I think the players in this don't know that. I am well aware that Vladimir Putin and the people around him are not, let's say, in a mindset of Minsk 1 and 2, where they were willing to talk to Angela Merkel, speak in German or whatever, and come to some kind of assessment of, okay, yeah, we can do that. We can do that. We can make that deal. We can make that deal. We'll pull back. They'll pull back. Everything's good. And we can implement the Minsk agreements. Just take our word for it. And then they use it to build up a massive military that Russia is fighting and destroying right now. I don't get the sense that they're in that mindset of, hey, let's trust the West. Let's believe what is coming out of their mouth, especially given all of the items that I pointed out in the very beginning. The conflict with Georgia, where they were offering Georgia and Ukraine NATO membership. Georgia 2, where they once again tried to overthrow the government of Georgia to create another front. You get Minsk 1, 2, where they basically lied through. You get Istanbul agreements, where Boris Johnson jumps in and says, hey, cut this up. We're not going to do this. You get, we won't move an inch to the east, meaning that was an oldie, but a goodie. They didn't move to the east, they moved to the border at that point. And then, as I pointed out, knocked over the government of Ukraine. Pulling out of the INF treaty. Like, I'm trying to point out that all of these things were effectively lies. Lies. And it was Trump that did that. So how do you trust the government that is perpetually lying and that only sticks with agreements when those agreements suit its interests? So you get something like the JCPOA where they just blow it off completely. Why? Because Donald Trump didn't like it, and so they just blew it off. You can't trust that government. And because you can't trust that government, how do you, as Vladimir Putin, go in, shake Trump's hand, and believe that anything that you shake his hand with is legitimate? My point is, you cannot. The point is, you cannot. It's not that I don't think Russia knows it. They do. It's the public that I don't think gets it. They seem to be under this delusion that there is a deal to be had and that the United States and Russia are about to shake hands and about to be best buds running into the sunset. That is not the way the U.S. works. This is just a temporary, that's a road bump in the way that they look at it. Let me bring in my man, Carl Zha. Oh, I'm sorry, you were talking. Were you on the phone?
I'm just testing my mic. Sorry,
okay.
I dropped almost dropped the ball again. I apologize.
Why do you have such a hard time with that, Carl? Is it because it's in the evening and normally was it afternoon? Look, I would tell you, I end up like let's say eating a late lunch or eating a late dinner, and then just fall asleep in a chair and you wake up like, all right, I gotta get a show. That didn't happen today. I had a medical appointment today. That's why I was running late. But thank you for joining me, man. I really do appreciate it. I honestly do. I know I know a show in the evening is difficult, at least for me, especially when I'm used to doing the morning show. And by the time you hit 5 and 6 o'clock, my body is just ready to chill out. So I do appreciate you coming on. Even if it's a bit late, I do appreciate it. I know it's me asking, and so it's a ask. So I do get it.
No, it's cool. I was just playing with my kids. I forgot the time. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that's not too bad. I don't feel bad about that. That's okay. That's your child. That's fine. Carl, I want to show you something. This video had me in stitches, and I think it may have you in stitches. Mark Sloboda turned me onto it. And this is basically what took place in a nutshell. And I want to get your commentary on it. This is this, and this.
All right, Vladimir, if you don't end that war in Ukraine in 50 days, I'm going to do something very strong.
Oh, God, this again. Okay, right, cool.
What's that? Cool? I'll show you cool. Now you have 10 days. Okay, maybe 12.
Love it. Can't wait.
Okay, that's it.
Ow! Holy shit! Why did you hit me? Why did you hit me?
Look, somebody's going to pay the price for Vladimir not listening to me, and it's not going to be me, all right?
But he is also helping Russia.
Oh my God.
I could.
Yeah, well, but he's...
Oh, God, that's so funny.
God.
And by the way, that's what happened, right? Because they hit India with like 50% sanctions, secondary tariffs? China, nothing.
That's exactly what happened. I mean, because the reason really they're putting the clamp on India right now because Donald Trump is getting desperate. He's not getting the deal he wanted on Ukraine because he's still under the illusion that United States can dictate terms to Russia on how this post-war settlement is going to be in Ukraine. But you can't get what you want in, art of deal negotiations, what you cannot win on the battlefield. And Russia is winning on the battlefield. And they hold all the cards. And this is why, I mean, that video is just perfect. That video just perfectly illustrates the situation. Trump is taking out his frustration on India because he can't do much with China. I mean, he was slapping he said he was going to slap secondary sanctions on people who purchase Russian oil. Well, the largest purchaser of Russian oil, number 1 is China. Number 2 is India. The United States still depend on China for the rare earth shipment. I mean, like China just gave them a 6-month extension for the U.S. car companies. That can be taken back anytime. And like Scott Bessent had to chase the Chinese vice mayor all the way to Europe to make that deal. They're not going to scatter that deal. This is why China, they said straight out, who we buy oil from is our business. That's our sovereign rights. We will not let that be questioned. And and then what did Trump do? He extended the trade tariff truce for another 90 days. He just approved it. He just approved the another 90 days extension for the trade truce with China. But India, because India has less cards to play, so to speak, because China is a producer, has a producer power. Unlike Scott Bessent. Scott Bessent said, no, you don't understand. We have all the cards because we're the creditor. We're the consumer. We hold all the cards. They need our money. Well, it turns out China don't need your money. They're prepared to walk away. And there's nothing U.S. can do about it. But India, this is the thing. Trump is a type of person who only respects strength. He does not respect weakness. In fact, he preys on weakness. So, in fact, if you saw what happened in the aftermath of the Indian-Pakistan conflict, now the United States and Pakistan actually starting to warm up because, again, from Trump's perspective, the value India provided was that India could provide as a possible counterweight to China. This is why throughout the Biden administration, Biden look the other way when they knew a lot of oil and gas was being purchased by India and it was being re-exported to Europe. That was they even said as much to the U.S. media. Said like, okay, like the U.S.-India relationship is multifaceted. We need to stay together with the largest democracy, to confront China in the Pacific. So, but the result of the Indian-Pakistan conflict was that they saw, oh, wait a minute, Pakistan just humiliated India with Chinese weapon systems.
Right.
So how can we count on India to counter China, right? When they just got a humiliation in the hands of Pakistan using Chinese weapons, no less. So this is why I think what the Trump administration trying to do right now, they're trying to improve their ties with Pakistan, hopefully to peel Pakistan a little bit away from China. And they just don't care about India anymore because from Trump's perspective, India is not providing as much value as a counterweight to China anymore. And so that's why he is taking out his frustration with Russia on Modi. And that serves only to drive India to open a new chapter of the relationship with China. Modi is going to go to China end of this month. This is the first time in the 7 years that Modi have visited China. And before Modi visits, Indian National Security Advisor, National Defense, the Indian Defense Minister, Indian Foreign Minister, all have visited China. And according to the Indian Foreign Minister Jay Shankar, he said, "Oh, I think everything is moving in positive direction." So, just like how United States pushed Russia and China together, now they're pushing India and China together. This is why, Jamar, I say Trump is my president for peace. Give that guy a Nobel Peace Prize already, please.
It's funny. I kept saying, do it, do it, do it. I was super curious on whether he was going to do it, right? Because I'm like, you have put tariffs on the entirety of the world, which means you've raised the cost of Americans, what they have to pay in stores and everything else. Okay. And then you're going to say, and we're also going to put 100% tariffs on India, China, whoever rando that buys oil from Russia. And I'm like, whoa, that's pretty amazing. Let me see you do that. Like how much tax are you really going to put on the American worker, right? And so then he's like, yeah, it's not going to be 50 days, it's going to be 10. He's like, ooh, why not make it 5? Why not make it 3? Do it now. Let me see it. And then you get this clip, which is fantastic. You're going to love this one, where J.D. Vance is sitting having a conversation with a reporter. And they say, hey, J.D. Vance. It's funny. Maria, what is her name? What is her? Bartoloma. I used to have such a crush on her. I used to have such a crush on her. Listen to this. Listen to what she says here.
Obviously, the China issue.
Basically, she's asking him, hey, what about the sanctions on China? You were supposed to pass those also, right?
Not afraid to put significant tariffs on countries like India for buying Russian oil. Are you going to do a similar move to China as well? They're also buying Russian oil.
Well, the president said he's thinking about it, but he hasn't made any firm decisions. Obviously, the China issue is a little bit more complicated because our relationship with China, it affects a lot of other things that have nothing to do with the Russian situation. So the president's reviewing his options, and of course, he'll make that decision when he decides.
Right. It's so complicated.
The complicated part is China have them by the balls. That's a complicated part. Right. China have them by the balls in terms of the Chinese monopoly of rare earths. Right now, even if you dig out rare earth out of California, you still need to ship it to China for refining because you don't have the technology, machinery, or the human capital to know how to make it into rare earth heat-resistant magnets. And this is why, this is why this is a quite different treatment. I think it's very short-sighted. I mean, from the perspective, it's short-sighted from if you actually want to, preserve the U.S. empire. That's short-sighted because you are destroying this alliance that you have built over the past years. now like the Indians are very upset. They did not expect this turn of the events, because they, from their perspective, they have been playing ball with Washington, right? Except they've been playing ball except on the Russian oil purchase, but they thought they got a exemption, because that the exemption card was given to them during the Biden administration. They thought it was understood, the U.S. will continue to look other way, but they were completely blindsided, because I think also Modi administration, they thought they had more influence in U.S. than they really do, and because they thought with the rising affluence and influence of Indian Americans in U.S., they thought they have more say in Washington, but that was not the case, and this is they got floored. They got blindsided. So this is why they're going to China right now. They're reversing all their policies of containment versus China. Like after India-China border conflict in 2020, India put a whole bunch of restrictions on Chinese investment in Indian economy, and they banned TikTok. They're the first country to ban TikTok. That's where the U.S. got that. Yes, that's where the U.S. got the idea to ban TikTok. So now they're talking about loosening the restriction on the Chinese investment in the Indian economy, because before 2020, a lot of the Indian tech startup was funded with Chinese money from big Chinese tech giant like Tencent, Alibaba, etc. But they didn't like that. They cut that off. Now they're saying, oh, well, what are we considering? Were we considering to welcome in Chinese investment into Indian economy? Because this is what Donald Trump did. In many ways, Donald Trump is the best U.S. president for China in decades.
It's so short-sighted. You're right. What's wild about it? Any schoolboy basic analysis of BRICS. Why does BRICS exist? BRICS exists because the U.S. and let's say Europe has been running roughshod over the world economy, and the other economies are gotten sick of it. Period. And especially the exploitation of the dollar and using the dollar as a weapon, all of this stuff made it even worse, right? If that is true, which it is, how do you attack India like this or Brazil like this? Now, you could say, well, these are all part of BRICS. And so we want to somehow put the screws to BRICS. Hopefully you can break them. But if they don't break, they will be closer together and they will be very angry at you, which is where India, Brazil is today, especially India. India was supposed to be the American-friendly BRICS country. That was the one that's... Yes. India doesn't want to have a dollar or have a currency. India doesn't want to do that stuff. India, what about now? What about now?
Yeah, that's all going to change. Same thing in Brazil. Brazil, after Trump slapped 50% tariff on Brazil for not releasing Bolsonaro, that's a blatant intervention in Brazilians' domestic politics.
Yes.
That's not going to win him more friends in Brazil. This is only going to make the BRICS tighter, stronger. So, I love Trump, man. He's my president for accelerationism, for the decline of U.S. empire. I love
BRICS is circling the wagon. That's what it seems to be. It seems like India was in Russia meeting with Putin or his representatives. As you pointed out, they're going to China. Brazil, all of these guys were on the phone calls. Hell, they're even on the phone calls talking about the Alaska meeting that is coming up between Trump and Putin.
This is what I said before. Like the people, all these nations should have come together, form a collective action faced with the U.S. tariff, rather than trying to negotiate bilaterally, one-on-one. And then, Trump is going to apply maximum pressure on each one. Whereas, if you negotiate as a bloc, you will be much stronger. You have much more stronger negotiation position. And so, but Trump is gonna. Don't worry, Trump is gonna make that happen. My president.
Why don't you think it happen? I'm super curious on that, because my assumption was they're obviously stronger together. If you have 10 people, if you deal with the bully 101, he's like, "Give me your lunch money." It's different when you have 10.
The thing is, a lot of people are still thinking, okay, if I'm the first to rush to Washington and you should show my eagerness for the deal, maybe I will get a better deal. That's how a lot of these. That's drove a lot of the country to Washington in the early days for the trade deal. Including countries like Japan. And then when Japan asks the Trump administration what you want, and they're like, "What's your offer?" They're completely confused. Like, what the hell is going on? And so these, yeah.
That's so funny. Like it's sad and funny on some level. Like the vassal of Europe, where they're like, how far can we spread our ass open? And Trump still doesn't care. He's like, we'll give you 15%. You got to invest all of this money in me. You got to buy all our weapons and oil and everything. It's just like, dude. And von der Leyen going back, and they're like, that's the best that you got. France was like, that's capitulation. Like, it's deeply humiliating. But I understand why Europe did it, because they're vassals. It's the rest of the world that I legit thought they are obviously going to lump together because it's their best interest to lump together.
But I think Trump is pushing India too far this time.
Yes,
because India obviously is not going to cut off its ties with Russia, because they have a very long-standing tie with Russia, stretching all the way back to the Cold War, when India was basically very pro-Soviet Union. At that time, United States was more closer with Pakistan's military government, right? Because they're also working together to overthrow the communist government in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, and all that. Right. And so that traditional friendship survived with the collapse of the Soviet Union. India continued to have very close relationship with Russia, where India depends on to provide a lot of its weapon systems. India's aircraft carrier, they got it from Russia. India's air defense system, S-400, they got it from Russia. They have a lot of their planes. They have the MiG-22s and the SUs. They all got from Russia. So they are, and they have a very lucrative trade deal with the Russian oil, because they're getting a discount on the Russian oil. And then suddenly, around after 2022, India became, they discover a large amount of oil somehow, and they start become an oil exporter, become an oil and gas exporter to Europe, because they just magically discover very large reserve of oil up north somewhere. And so this all worked out very well for India. Whereas when Trump is not offering any incentive, he's not offering any carrots. It's all big sticks. Like, I'm gonna hit you with tariff if you don't do what I say. Oh, you want some carrots? My carrots is I don't put tariff on you.
Right. I don't hit you. That's what my tariff is. That's what my carrot is. Yeah.
And they, on top of that, they want India to open its. They wanted, because India do have a lot of high barrier tariffs, to protect domestic industries. U.S. want to demolish all that tariff wall, but particularly in the agricultural sector. Right. So the U.S. farm product, which is heavily subsidized by U.S. government, by the way, will flood the Indian market. But look, India, this is a country where 60% of the population is still employed in the agricultural sector. That's the kind of the largest employer of people. There's no way Modi can afford to lose that vote, that block, because those people are going to suffer if they let in the subsidized American farm product in, and that will lead to massive dislocation and massive loss of jobs. So this is a kind of a make or break deal for the Indian government. They cannot back off on that. But Trump doesn't care. For him, it's like, hey, my way or the highway. So Modi is going to Beijing.
It's weird, man, because I'm having a hard time saying this. It's a very bizarre situation. Usually, if we have a trade deal, both of us want to come out saying, okay, both of us got what we want on some level. It's a fair exchange. It's kind of like you're buying a car and say, okay, well, I'll pay this much for the car. That's not the way Trump works, though. And it's almost like, for him, I have to show that it's unequal. Meaning I have to show that I won, you lost, that you look like an asshole, you look like a fool, and that I could show this and present you to the American public like Roman used to, bring people in crates and people throwing eggs and whatnot. That's what Trump likes to do to world leaders when he is in trade deals. And it is a bizarre, I don't know if it's insecurity. I don't know what it is. I don't know if he thinks, well, my base likes to see me humiliate these world leaders. Look at what, 15% tariffs, or otherwise I would have put 30% on it. And I'm going to sit here with her and present her to the world as a loser. And everybody knows she's a loser. Or I'm going to talk about Japan and how I'm getting Japan to invest all this money. Japan is like, dude, he's out of his mind. We didn't tell him that. But I'm just making a point of saying it is a odd psychological quirk.
But Jamar, but the American elite has always have this zero-sum mentality when it comes to the world. The U.S. have no allies. U.S. have no allies. We only have vassal states. You are not partners. I'm sorry, you are vassals. But the only difference with Trump is he just like rip it all in the open. He wants to actually make a public display of the humiliation ritual, right? I mean, back in the days when you have Obama is like the velvet glove. He put there's an iron fist in the velvet glove, but at least he handle you with velvet glove. but Trump is like, he's taking the glove off. Like, I'm gonna slap you.
Been dealing with bricks all day. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't get it. It's just weird. It's like a weird psychological thing. How's China going to deal with this? Because supposedly the U.S. and China are still in negotiations, as you heard from Vance. Well, there are two things. One, it's clear that China has slowed down the production of rare earths. So the U.S. military and everything else have a harder time in using those things for issues of war. So we can't give Ukraine additional weapons. It's going to take Israel, X number of years in order to build back their stockpiles. How is the U.S. military or the European military going to do? Like, it's that, right? That's part of it. The other part is also China seems to be dropping dollars, meaning treasuries. Like, they seem to be getting rid of them. I know the last time it was Japan that was getting rid of them, but China seems to be slowly getting rid of them also.
Well, the way China is not dumping the treasury, because if China dump all the treasury, it's going to be China that's going to lose money if the bond price goes down. So what China has been doing is they're not buying any new bonds. They're just sitting on their old bond holding and let them reach maturity and cash out. So this is why there was a steady decline of Chinese holding from like 1.4 trillion at the peak. Now it's less than half. It's like 700 million. Yeah. So China is not actively dumping. They're just holding on to the bond until it matures, then, but they're not buying new bonds to replace that. This is why, before our Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen keep on going to China, maybe she also liked mushrooms, but she really was going there to beg the Chinese to continue to buy more U.S. treasuries. But China is not buying more. China is like, now we have all these dollars. What are we gonna do? We can't buy stuff that we want from you. You won't let us. You won't let us to buy the most advanced NVIDIA AI chips. You won't let us. You just recently put restriction on sale of Boeing engine. So all these products that we actually want to buy from United States that actually cost a lot of money, you don't let us to buy. There's only so much soybean and corn we can buy from the United States. What the hell are we gonna do with all these piles of money? Right? So they are. This is one of the reasons for China's Belt and Road Initiative was to invest all these dollars they earn from the trade surplus with the United States into actual projects, infrastructure projects in other global souths, so that build connectivity, builds more trade. In a way, more diversify China's own holdings of its dollars pile, but also diversify China's trade away from United States. This is why when Trump started this tariff war, United States is not prepared. It's not really prepared to decouple from China, despite all the lyrics, all the rhetorics. Whereas China has been prepared since the first Trump term, ever since Trump started to place sanction on China, to prepare for the eventuality of decoupling from the United States. That's why they have been expanding their market to other countries like ASEAN. ASEAN is now largest Chinese trading partner. And EU is the second largest. United States is only the third largest trading partner of China now. So this is why when it comes to trade negotiation, China is much more prepared. They have been prepared for the last, since 2017. What is it now? They have been prepared for the last 8 years. Trump just like pulled this tariff thing like out of his hat. Like let's go. And U.S. industry is not prepared. This is why you're not. This is why U.S. don't have any hands when they come to deal with China. This is what Trump has belatedly realized. This is why Vance said, "Well, our relationship with China is very complicated."
It's complicated. It's very complicated. I can't explain it. It's just too complicated.
They just got me by the balls. That's the
you can't say that, right? It just tells her she has me by the balls. I will tell you this. I used to work in as a barista, and one of the servers, he was just a flake, right? And the guy, for whatever reason, just didn't show up to work that day. And the manager came. He's like, "Where is he?" It was like, he didn't show up. He says, "God damn it, he got me by the balls," because he couldn't fire him because he needed him because we were already short. He's like, "Got by the balls. I can't do anything about it." I'm curious on one last thing. So China, and this is going to affect China. This is going to affect Russia and Iran. This has to do with the Azerbaijan. What is going on with this mouse? The Azerbaijan deal with Armenia, where they went to the White House, shook hands with Donald Trump. They kind of made the point of saying, "Hey, this is great. We now have peace." And now a quarter, I think it's called Zanzibar quarter. I think they're naming it the Trump. What is it? The Trump quarter of peace or some nonsense like that. But China is one of the countries that are going to be adversely affected by this. I'm just a quick thought, or do you have a thought about it before we go? This could be the last.
Well,
question.
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, they have this was planned out way in advance. By the way, they had the idea of pumping access to the Caspian oil since the Clinton era, when right after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Right. They have been working on to get the access to the Central Asian and Caspian oil and gas, and the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict was a distraction because that means they can't build a pipeline straight from Azerbaijan to Turkey, right? And now that this whole corridor idea is to kind of finalizing this long laid out plan to access the Caspian oil. And also Israel has a large interest in this because Israel largely depends on the oil that's piped from Azerbaijan through Turkey, right, and through Turkey's port, Ceyhan port, to Israel. So Israel also like to see that happen. This is like United States, Turkey, Israel, Azerbaijan all have a hand to places, and Armenia. I mean, like, they try to pivot closer to Washington.
Yes,
but only thing they have gotten so far is they got destroyed in a war by Azerbaijan. Yeah, they got destroyed. I'm trying to find a better word, but I can't. They got destroyed in a war with Azerbaijan, and now they have to go to Washington just to all this peace negotiation just to make Trump look good. I think that man really wants his Nobel Peace Prize. By the way, that's why White House actually tweeted out, like, he's the greatest peace president. But this also, it's a cover for this really important oil energy corridor that will link Azerbaijan to Turkey, and then and possibly for export of those hydrocarbons to Europe. And so Armenia is getting a raw deal out of this because they have a pro-West president, who decided they need to pivot away from Russia and into the Western camp. And Iran this is not so good for Iran either, because Armenia used to be their ally, right? And Azerbaijan actually have very close tie with Israel. In their war with Armenia, one of the deciding factor was Israeli-made drones for Azerbaijan that tipped the balance. Yeah, and there was a lot of suspicion that Israel were basing a lot of their anti-Iran operations out of Azerbaijan, including during the 12-day Israel-Iran war. So
they were. Yeah, that's not suspicion. They were.
Yeah, so this is not really good news for Iran. Because they're getting cut off with the Armenia gang. They're getting physically isolated. Now their only link to Russia is through the Caspian, through the Caspian Sea corridor. But for China, though, China is not as much affected, because this is like very far from China. China is already getting Caspian gas pipe through a pipeline through Kazakhstan. Because Kazakhstan also bordering Caspian Sea. And China had built that pipeline like for years, for decades. So they're already getting their share of oil and gas from the region. Like they're not that. This doesn't affect China as much, but it affects more like the Chinese partners in the region, like Russia, like Iran. Yeah.
Carl, you were fantastic. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. I honestly do. Carl Zha, he is host of Silk and Steel podcast, focused on China and surrounding regions and their history, culture, and politics. You can follow Carl on Twitter at Carl Zha. You can follow his podcast at Steel Silk In. What is that? That looks wrong. You can support him on Patreon at Silk In, the letter Steel. Carl, you be safe, man. Thank you for this.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, Jamar.
Have a good one. All right. I see her in the background with that great background indeed. Sabby Sabs. How you doing, Sabrina? You doing okay?
I'm doing great, Jamal. How are you?
I am doing fine. I apologize for getting to you late. I asked the question at the very end and it went long. I apologize for that. Just for the audience to know, Sabrina Salvati, she is a Boston-based activist, leftist, and podcaster. She is a member of Revolutionary Blackout Network, a Black-led multicultural network and co-op of everyday people, activists, and allies focused on empowering our communities through education, organization, and direct action. Thank you for joining me on this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Would you like to promo your documentary, or should we not do that first? It's up to you. If you want to give the audience a preview.
Sure.
Okay. I tend to like to preview whatever my guest is doing because I want to help their work.
Sure. Well, I'm currently filming a documentary called Removed, Black Erasure in Boston. And it is about what happened to the Black population here in Boston. And it's not that they are not here. They are. But there are fewer. And there's a whole story behind that. And a lot of this just boils down to gentrification. So we dive into what happened in the past and also what's happening currently today, regardless of what mayor we have in power. So there's a lot going on. And I think that this documentary is going to show people a different side of Boston that they didn't know was there.
Is it possible to, how can I say this? Because it sounds bad. All right, gentrification, just so the audience know, is when you improve a neighborhood, you bring in a different demographic into that neighborhood. So let's say if they were Black, and then you get more whites coming in because it becomes more upscale, in which case you just push out all of the Blacks, Mexicans, or whatever else. Is it possible to upscale it without doing that? And I know that sounds weird. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you have a Black population that's in a particular area, is it possible to upscale that particular area without losing that Black population, as opposed to we're going to upscale it, we're going to bring in whites? Do you think they're intentionally focused on whites? Do you think they're intentionally focused on just economics? And I hope that question makes sense.
That were implemented in Boston were 100% racial.
Okay.
That's the difference. There's different types of gentrification. And I think the one that a lot of people are familiar with is people being pushed out of their neighborhoods because they were priced out.
Right.
These aren't people that were priced out. These are people that were physically removed. So I think there is a difference. And I think that's what a lot of people just may not be aware of that. Like, you really have to go into the history of how the government came in and physically removed people from their homes and stole their homes from them, stole generational wealth. So what we're seeing more so today, a lot of that is people being priced out, right? So that's the gentrification you hear about a lot. We're talking about the government seizing people's homes and taking their generational wealth and pushing them out so that they can make, I guess, some type of benefits here for white flight. There's a whole history to this. And I think that people just don't know. I think people are more aware of it if you talk about San Francisco. That one's on record more. So you can talk about like what happened to the Black population in San Francisco. But that's easier to find. But when it comes to Boston in particular, a lot of people just don't know. And that's why, like, I think like a lot of visitors, when they come here, especially like friends that I've had from high school and college, when they come here for the first time, every one of them, regardless of race, they're like, where are all the Black people? And there's a whole story behind that. And I think that people just need to understand like what happened, like how the city came in and forcefully took them out. So that's why you don't see as many Black people here. Like, the documentary gets into all of this. I don't want to give too much away, but we will have a teaser that we're going to roll out to people so that they can see. But the crazy thing about it is it's still happening now. It's still happening today. They're still taking land and homes from Black people in Boston. It's very clear. And I think DC is probably the more visible example of this, where they want a certain demographic to stay here. They want the college graduates to stay in the city and work here. They don't, that's what they're building. They're not building a Boston for people that have blue collar jobs, like, which is what Boston was. They're not building that. They are building a Boston that is for the professional managerial class. And that's what they want here. And that's who they want to stay here. And that's why the rents are enormous. I mean, we're up there with New York City now. That's why the rents are through the roof. But in order for them to do that, you know, the biggest complaint is the housing situation. That means that they're going to tear down, build something new, even if that means that people are going to lose their homes because they don't want you here.
Right. I would tell you, DC is insane. And you know, it's funny. I've had this conversation with people all this, like, how do people live here? Like, meaning I was working at the radio station, paid very well for doing radio. And even then it was like, okay, this is too expensive to live near the station. Like, you have to put out so much of your money just for rent. I had one friend, she was paying over, let's say, $2,300 just for a single for studio. It's insane. I don't know how anybody, like the person who's a barista, the person who is working at a store or something like that, I don't know how they live in DC. You would almost have to go out to either like Maryland, maybe Silver Springs. Even then, you're still talking about over $2,000 for rent. It's insane. So
even the DC Wharf. Have you been to the DC Wharf?
Yeah.
That area over there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Farron used to live over there, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how much she paid for rent though, but maybe $1,800, $1,700 on the low end in DC.
But that area replaced a whole like Black population. That area, the DC Wharf, like that didn't used to be a safe area. Like, a lot of people don't realize that, like, that was a lower income, a neighborhood. But again, to build that wharf that you see in DC, that's what they did. They knocked down those homes and pushed those people out so that they can build that DC Wharf, which is where a lot of the, tourists and stuff go to. But I mean, it's DC, it's Philly, it's Brooklyn, it's all these different places. But I think that Boston kind of has flown under the radar. I think a lot of people assume that Boston is this place of highly educated people, and there's tech is really big here. It's second after Silicon Valley. I think that's what people know of as Boston, right? But the reality is, like, Boston was a blue collar city. It was not this elite university haven, but they are making it a place for that particular population. And the reality is, who goes to those universities? So you see who they really want around and who they don't want around. And it's really sad. Like, I've seen, and I've been here since 2011. But what we get into in the documentary are things that happened before I even came here and what's happening present day. But since I've been here, I've watched them wipe whole communities out, entire communities out of people who have lived here their whole lives. And that's why that is why. And I think people need to understand that, because if you go to DC, you're not going to say, where are all the Black people? If you go to Baltimore, you're not going to say, where are all the Black people? You go to Philly, you're not going to say that. But people do say that when they come to Boston. And there's a reason behind that. And people need to know, like, there were more Black people here, but the city physically removed them.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's a whole history that goes into it. So looking forward to dropping that.
That's interesting. That is super interesting. We have a DC Black city, Black mayor, all the way through the government structure itself. That one's a tough one. Because, in fact, I'm glad you brought up DC. Donald Trump apparently sending the National Guard to police DC because of... Now, I will be honest with you. DC has a lot of violence associated with it, but it's also why you have cops, right?
Yeah, that's not his place. You know, and DC isn't the most violent city. There's cities in the US that have more crime than DC does.
That is true. But if you live there, it is violent. I'm telling you, I live there, right? I used to come out to my doctor's office and you would see people like, DC was the first city that I was in where there were like 3 killings that was near either my job, my house. You hear gunshots going on through the night. I know it's not Chicago, right? But it doesn't have to be Chicago. It still sucks when you're living in this kind of violent city where people get mugged. This is where, was it Bush, where his niece got mugged or something like that? Like, it doesn't matter what part of the city you're in. There are parts of it that are less dangerous than others. So DC proper tends to be a little bit less dangerous. The moment you get out to the wings of the city, you're in territory. So I'm not making the argument that it's Chicago, right? I'm just saying, when you live there, it is not the most cuddly place in the world to be. But again, sitting in the National Guard seems insane to me. Of cops.
I mean, this is just Trump being authoritarian, right? Like, I mean, I want people to understand, I do feel like this is a big distraction. Trump is doing everything except for releasing those Epstein files. Everything except releasing those Epstein files. This is why, to that point, this is why I and others argued for DC statehood. This is why they just don't have as much power. It's crazy. I know the White House is there, the Capitol's there, but the reality is that DC has a mayor. It's not a state, so they don't have a governor. There are certain decisions that the mayor can't make, even though they're mayor. They have to get approval from Congress. It's really weird, and it's like no other place. It's really like no other place.
It's not. It's weird. It's bizarre.
But we argued for this for quite some time, that DC needs to have some type of statehood so that they can have more control over their own district, and that they don't have to go through Congress to get certain things passed. I mean, imagine if we had to go through Congress, here in Massachusetts to get things passed that don't impact Congress. Like, why are you? So it's frustrating. And I know, there are some people there who support DC statehood. There are some people that don't. And I'm wondering, for the people that I spoke to that said they were against it a couple of years ago, I'm wondering how they feel about that today. Because see, this is where the president can come in and he can just make these decisions. Yes, there is violence in DC, but the data shows that crime has decreased in DC, and it is also decreased in its neighboring city of Baltimore, which is where my family is from. So Donald Trump is really trying to distract. I also feel like this is a war on the homeless population, because that was one of the groups that he said that he wanted to target. He said the homeless people got to go. So where are they going to put them? They're just going to throw them in jail. This is ramping up the police state, which I'm 100% against. I don't support the police state. And I feel sorry, like, for people that live in DC. This is absolutely ridiculous. But again, nobody is stopping him.
Yeah.
Nobody is coming in to check him and tell him, no, you cannot do this. You can't just take over a city like this. I mean, I've been to DC multiple times. I've never felt like I was in danger. But again, like I said, my family is from Baltimore.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just, I feel like it is another distraction, just like the distraction of, we'll give a $50 million, $50 million award for anybody who can capture Maduro. All of this is a distraction away from what this administration promised to do, which is to release those Epstein files. And that's what they're trying to turn your attention to another issue. And I think people need to not let that go. Do not let the Epstein situation go. You got to continue to talk about that and focus on that. It's very obvious they're trying to cover and protect very powerful people, including some of their friends.
Agreed.
So it just, to me, it's insane that you can just come in and say, we're bringing in the National Guard. We're just going to take over the city. Like, no, this is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
No, I agree with you. It's like, this was kind of like the thing in New York where they were like, there's crime on the subway, so let's bring in the National Guard for the subway. And it's like, okay, well, do they even have arresting authority? No, they don't have arresting authority. So what are they doing? Just mean mugging, holding somebody until the cops. Like, it's a very weird thing. You have cops for a reason. DC, look, I don't get the sense that DC is Chicago, right? Where you have 10 people get killed overnight or some insane stuff like that. It doesn't require it. So I agree with you. It's theatrical. A lot of the stuff is theatrical that Donald Trump is doing. The Epstein thing, I also agree with you. It's a big deal. Like, if we assume the premise is a guy who got money from somewhere, who was with supposedly an apex pedophile, was working with Israeli intelligence, and was effectively getting videos on very powerful people like Bill Clinton, Richardson. I'm not saying that these people were involved. I'm just saying there was a close relationship. Donald Trump, who had been Epstein's friend going back for like 20, 30 years, and getting the goods on these people in order to exploit that information against the person. That's a big deal, right? Because you're talking about a government where you have no idea how many people might have been involved in this, and how many people, well, they may have something on, assuming that all of this stuff is correct, which is the argument that they've made about Epstein. How do you let that go?
To protect Israel.
Yeah, or himself. It's very possible that Trump is in that list. He's been friends with Epstein for like 30 years.
He flew on Epstein's jet. I think it was 7 times it was reported. I mean, it's so obvious to anyone paying attention. Now, that doesn't mean he partook in the activities on that island. Right. We don't know who actually partook in the activities on that island. We don't know. But the victims know. The victims know. And so I'm surprised to see this, but I don't know if you saw this, Jamal. Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna have joined forces to come together to give the victims their day of say. I think this is supposed to happen Wednesday, I believe. Is supposed to happen. They know who the clients were. Why is Ghislaine Maxwell being seen as a victim now all of a sudden? Do people realize who Ghislaine Maxwell's father was? I mean, it's obvious all this goes back to Israel.
Yes.
And that's what the protection is. And it's just so, like, I'm sorry. And I've said this multiple times, for all the people who said under the Biden administration, yes, go after the Epstein clients, yada, yada, get them, protect the children, who are now all of a sudden trying to find a way to defend Donald Trump for not releasing those Epstein files when his administration promised that they would. Then it's not about moral issues for you. It's about you trying to protect your hero. It's about partisan politics. And I think at a point right now, in particular, especially in independent media, I think people are looking to those who are being consistent on the issues, regardless if Biden is in office or Trump is in office. And you can see people just trying to pull their hair out and twist themselves into pretzels to make excuses for what Donald Trump is doing when they had serious issue with it under the Biden administration. So I think that's what more people are starting to pay attention to. The reality is, do you care about the kids or not? Do you care about the victims or not?
Yeah, I keep asking, where are the Johns? Like several years ago when this first broke, and it's like, where are the Johns? And nobody seemed to care about the Johns, right? Because if you're telling me that, all right, this guy has been an apex pedophile, he was messing with all of these kids, thousands of apparently. Okay, that's a lot of Johns. That's a lot of people who were doing very bad things in positions of power. I don't think Epstein was getting some rando off the street. I think he was dealing with a circle of powerful people that he was engaging with. And then he gets put in prison, supposedly suicides, quote unquote, himself. And then they're like, well, nothing to see here, folks. Everything is good.
Yes,
he died in prison. He committed suicide, quote unquote. Somebody suicided him in prison. And then they just, nothing to see here. How? Like, that is astonishing, right? Like, how do you do a nothing to see here? And then when you break down the mechanics of how he died, so they put him in with this big guy, Taglioni or whatever his name is. The guy had like 4 bodies buried out of his backyard. They claim that he tried to kill himself. Taglioni apparently slept through it. Okay. They put him in not solitary, but under special administration so they can watch for suicide watch. And he apparently, both guards either went narcoleptic, all of the cameras, with the exception of one facing the door, went off. And then they showed the one at the door, say, hey, see, everything's great. And then you find out there's like 3 minutes missing, and they patched the film together. I was like, okay, dude, are you serious right now?
And they revealed that it was more than one way to get into his cell. That was revealed recently. I was actually surprised corporate media.
Corporate media never that.
Yes, it was on CBS this morning. They showed the raw video footage, and they showed that there was a shadowy figure that was walking up the stairs, which was another way to get into that cell. Not just the view, the angle that you saw from that camera. There was another way to get into his cell. I was surprised that was on CBS this morning. I was shocked, but yeah, it's so obvious. And then people ask this question. They're like, is Jeffrey Epstein dead? Did we see a body? You know how it is when you watch like thrillers, or you ever watch like a thriller and you're like, oh, that person died. Like, did we see a body? And no, we don't know. We really don't know, but we know they covering for people. And I don't think that it's just Jeffrey Epstein. I think there are multiple Jeffrey Epsteins throughout the world. I don't think that just one person was doing this. I believe there are many Jeffrey Epsteins out there across the globe. And I think that's why they offered Ghislaine Maxwell what they offered her, so that she would play ball, so that she wouldn't reveal any information. The report I saw recently said that those files will remain sealed. I mean, this is so obvious. And people say, well, why didn't the Democrats release it? Good point.
Good question.
I don't remember them saying they would. The reason why people are pointing their fingers at Donald Trump's administration is because they're the ones that were promised to release it. The Democrats did not. So again, it's just, I just don't understand it. I don't know if people are just brainwashed, Jamal. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like the hero worship, but I do not understand how people can sit here at this point and still defend Donald Trump for these Epstein files. Like, I just can't. And I see people on social media, some of the like Trump stand,
defending Trump over this?
Yes. Even some of like the Trump, Trump supporters, like they were trying to find ways to defend him for this. He said, well, Trump said there's nothing there, so there's nothing there. I'm like, he's lied multiple times about these files right on television. And you guys, you've tricked your brain to believe whatever he says is truth. Let's just believe it.
I do think Democrats should have released it just on principle alone, but I agree with you. I mean,
they should have,
made it their like mantra. We're going to release the Epstein. All of these pedophiles are out there. Democrats are part of the pedophiles, like Bill Clinton. Like, they were very specific. And then to get in office, and Kash Patel was like, yeah, we checked. Ain't nothing to see here. Yeah. Nobody believed that, right? But it's both. Epstein didn't just engage with Republicans. He was, I mean, or just engage with Democrats. Like, it wasn't just, yeah, he just hung out with Bill Clinton. He was a butterfly for whoever had any level of clout that he may need to get or use later. If the model of Epstein is true, then it wasn't just a Democrat thing. It was Democrats, Republicans, financiers. It was, bankers. And as you point out, the Knesset, if you remember, I think this was last week where they had all of these people talking about rape and how there was like this organized satanic rape stuff going on. I mean, it was just insane. Like, I agree with you. I don't think for a moment it's just happening in the US and it's just Epstein and it's just a few random, I don't buy it.
No, and in fact, Whitney Webb had a newer article about this, about Naomi Campbell's connection to Jeffrey Epstein. For those who are not aware, Naomi Campbell, former supermodel, and pictures with her hanging out and partying with Jeffrey Epstein as well. I mean, Whitney will be on my show Thursday night. We'll get into this a little bit deeper, but again, this is a global network. It's not just, this is why I continue to tell people they don't usually go after the head of the snake. And I don't even believe Jeffrey Epstein was the head of the snake. That's the thing. I think he was just one of the minions that are out there doing the work. But the people, the true head of the snake, I don't think will ever be revealed or will ever be taken down. It's someone that I think it's the head of the snake is someone or people that you're not going to see. Right. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it's kind of like insulated in a way. But I mean, Epstein, even under the model that they give, was an agent, or he was a spy, or not a spy, like a asset. He wasn't. Yeah. He
how does someone who, how do you become a college professor and lying on your application that you were a Harvard University graduate? Here's the thing. Harvard has a very tight bubble. They have a close network. Harvard alumni know Harvard alumni. How did this guy get away with lying, saying that he was a graduate from Harvard University so he could get a job as a university professor? He had no experience teaching, none. How does that happen? If you're not a spy, like, how does that happen if you're not an agent?
Yeah, he has a very weird background. Like, nobody knows how he got his money. And then you got, what is his name? Acosta saying, I heard he was intelligence. He's above my pay grade. Give him a sweetheart deal.
Well, Lex Wexner lended him, well, I wouldn't even say lended him, but gave him money. That's the owner of the creator of Victoria's Secret and the Limited Group.
Yeah.
So he gave Jeffrey Epstein money. And then there is some speculation there where people wonder, was there a more romantic type relationship between the two of them? I don't know. And I haven't seen that confirmed. But he's the one that initially gave him thousands and thousands of dollars.
That is very weird. That's what I mean. That's very bizarre. That's very bizarre. And then, there's weird things like, okay, we'll release the file in 30 years where everybody's dead. It's like, screw that. Screw that. So, Sabrina, yeah, I agree with you. He is obviously trying to evade, escape, throw any chum in the water at all. Don't pay attention to me about these Epstein files. Hey, look over here at this. Look at 50 million for Maduro. Look at me going after the school. Look at me doing this. Look at me doing that. Yep. I agree. Don't talk about Epstein. Don't look at Epstein. One last thing. Do you think they're going to let him get away with that? I mean, it seems like, I agree with you. You had people like, what is his name? The weirdo, the high talking one that is Jewish. And oh God, he's a devout Zionist. He has a podcast. He has a very high voice. If I can say his name, he was defending Trump on this, where he was like, yeah, I mean,
Ben Shapiro.
That's it. Thank you, Ben Shapiro. He's like, yeah, there's nothing to really see here, folks. So let's just call it a day. Like, he flipped on a dime, right? But many of the other people in MAGA have been going after Trump. The guy the one who was dressed up in the bullhorns when he was raiding the building in 9/11 he comes out, attacks Trump. You have a lot of Trump supporters who are like, I'm done with Trump. How are you protecting that pedophile? It is even a tough lift for cultists on this one, to either come up with excuses or at the very least carry this notion of you are protecting a massive number of pedophiles because it's supposed to be in the thousands. So if you believe the narrative that they put out, there are a huge amount of people. Yeah, that's hard for them. Do you think there's going to be a reckoning for that? Like Ghislaine Maxwell is never going to say Donald Trump's name.
Well, I am seeing somewhat of a split. It seems like among MAGA, part of it is because of the Epstein. The other part of it is because of Gaza. So I am seeing a little bit of a split there. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But, the reality is Donald Trump's not running for president again either. So, there's that. I think at the end of the day, people are still going to support their party. That's the thing. That's the reality, right? It was like this idea that Democrats floated that, Kamala Harris can get those Republicans that supported Nikki Haley. She'll be able to get some of those. No, because at the end of the day, people end up supporting their party for the most part, right? So I don't know, but there is, like I said, he's not running again. Mm-hmm. So
it's like, what does it
I
matter?
don't know. I still think at the end of the day, like let's say JD Vance runs in 2028, they could probably try to make the argument the same one that people made for Kamala, right? Which is, well, they are the vice president, not the president. And I could see that happening. But I think that at the end of the day, it's really not a good look for Trump. But it's just, especially like to brag and say, I'm going to end the war in Ukraine, to brag and say, I'm going to end in this, that's happening in the Middle East. We're going to fix it. We're going to get everything back to the way that it was supposed to be. And here we are in August, and things have only escalated. So to me, it's just like, I don't know, man. I just hope that this teaches everybody not to look at politicians as heroes and not to worship politicians. And I think a lot of people see them as a savior, and you should never think that way. I think the best thing that we can do is to try to build dual power. I think that's going to be organizing within your communities, whether it's mutual aid, whether it's, worker cooperatives, whatever you can do. I think that's going to be the path forward. And if you're interested in mutual aid, you can always attend my mutual aid workshops. They're free. I do them on a Saturday morning. I'll be doing the next one at the end of this month. So if you're interested, I know some people already started groups after they attended the last workshop. So if you are interested in doing that, feel free to attend. But other than that, I just think we have to just build dual power, but you definitely can't look towards the politicians as a savior.
It's funny, and I'll let you go after this. In Dune, my audience is like, they're probably rolling their eyes right now. Frank Herbert is a god from my point of view. And I know it's ironic. It's like, hey, you shouldn't look up to these guys. Frank Herbert is an amazing writer. The part of the reason that he wrote Dune was to make that point. And so the entire first book is Paul being the savior, being raised up to be this kind of God man on earth. And come to find out in the second book, it all crashes. Like hundreds of millions of people are killed. Planets are torched. He's like, it's a disaster. And Frank Herbert's like, the point of me writing this book was to show that you should not look up to people. And he even pointed out that Richard Nixon was the best president that we've ever had in the United States because it taught people to be very skeptical of power. Whereas John F. Kennedy, less so because they idolized him as Camelot. Oh, it's just wild that you say that because you did on. Sabrina, thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. Sabby Sabs, she is a Boston-based activist, leftist, and podcaster. She's a member of Revolutionary Blackout Network, a Black-led multicultural network and co-op of everyday people, activists, and allies focused on empowering our communities through education, organizing, and direct action. Thank you for this. You be safe, okay?
Thanks, Jamal.
All right. All right. Let's see. Sabby is fantastic. Always appreciate her when she joins me. Her documentary comes out, I would imagine comes out soon. So definitely be on the lookout for it. She said she's going to put a promo of it before it comes up. We have a few minutes before we get to our guest, but I want to show this. I showed this a little bit earlier this morning. Didn't have time to entirely go through it. I don't know if I finished my monologue. Either way, this is Prime Minister Armenia, Azerbaijan, signing the deal for the corridor. If I can get this thing up, my computer's freaking out. Right here. Listen to what's being said here because I want to make a point.
The President of the United States, the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan, and the Prime Minister of the Republic of Armenia will now sign the joint declaration on the outcomes of the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity Summit.
That's really
They will
beautiful.
sign 3 copies in English. The President of the United States signs as a witness to the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan and the Prime Minister of the Republic of Armenia, affirming their path to peace, stability, and prosperity. We kindly ask that all guests remain seated for the signing of the document.
Now, if you remember, Carl made the point of saying Armenia is getting hosed in this process. Now, Armenia in a war with Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh. Armenia gets trashed, completely and utterly trashed in the process of getting a mud hole stumped in them. And I mean that in the fullest sense of the word. They were looking for Pashtun because they wanted to string Pashtun up. They eventually beat up, I believe, Speaker of the House at one point. I could be wrong, the Speaker of the House of this specific position, but one of the members of the houses, the audience got their hands on him, or people got their hands on him, nearly strung him up. And what it boils down to is Armenia, Turkey was effectively helping Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan had a huge amount of oil money that they were putting into weapons, bullets, drones, and everything else. Armenia did not have that money in this situation, and they lost, not to mention Israel's assistance also. They lost badly. And in losing, they lost various territories considered in Nagorno-Karabakh. All right, the territory is technically considered to be Azerbaijani, or Azeri, I should say, even though Armenians were the ones that lived there. Those Armenians in many of those places were being ethnically cleansed, being pushed out. The world hadn't necessarily made a big deal about it because technically it was considered to be Azerbaijan or Azeri land anyway. All right. Armenia, who was part of the CSTO, CSTO, I think, security, yeah, CSTO, an organization kind of like NATO, looked to Russia and was like, hey, you're not going to help me in this? What the F? Now, the same Armenia had been getting closer and closer to the West anyway. And so you can imagine, it's like, dude, you have been spending your time getting closer and making closer ties with the US, with Europe and everything else. And now that you got yourself into a fight that you are losing, you are begging us to help. Russia was like, hey, we can't help you because Nagorno-Karabakh, it's not yours. It's not really your territory. You've never made a claim on that territory. And because you've never made a claim on a territory, you were not attacked. So think of it like if Poland says, well, NATO is being triggered because of an attack in Ukraine that is near our border. It's like, dude, that's not your territory. That is somebody else's territory. So no, you can't declare everybody else get involved in order to help you out in a situation where that territory is not yours and is not considered to be yours from the standpoint of the world. Armenia had feelings about this. Now, Russia did make the point, look, if you are attacked, meaning if Azerbaijan steps foot on your territory, we will get involved. I'm giving backstory because we're trying to explain why some of this is taking place and why Armenia is salty and willing to go into this process where they're being effectively taken advantage of. All right, so they're salty, they're pissed off. And in the process of being pissed off, they lean further and further to the West because they are very pissed off at Russia for not coming to their assistance when they were getting their head beat in by Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan also continued to take more and more and nip away at the various territory. So it's very possible that part of the reason that they're taking this deal is because they want to, let's say, stop that from taking place. But it's also likely that there's something else underneath this deal that may not necessarily be disclosed yet that Azerbaijan and Armenia are effectively getting for making this deal. We have to see. They have already exposed elements, let's say part of the treaty that they signed, But there's the belief, and oftentimes there are these secretive deals that are not disclosed as part of the treaty that we don't necessarily know one way or the other, A, if it exists, or B, what it is if it does exist. What we do know is that the United States is going to get access to this. This corridor, Carl Zha made the point of saying a pipeline. It's not just the pipeline. Yes, a pipeline may be part of it, but the issue has more to do with A, you're cutting off Iran and you're allowing the United States and Western powers to effectively get very close to Iran in a way that they weren't able to do prior. Iran has feelings about that, as they should. Russia will most likely have feelings about that. As I pointed out on the map before, Azerbaijan, that territory is right there beside Russia. You're allowing the West to create a corridor that they are going to own for 99 years. That is problematic. Iran comes out, gives a strongly worded statement, effectively comparing what is taking place with that corridor to Ukraine. Right here, Iran's Revolutionary Guard's political Deputy General Yadola Javani warned Armenia Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev that the decision to involve the United States and NATO in the Caucasus is, quote, an even greater mistake than Zelensky's, unquote. That's pretty heavy language considering what's taking place right now with Zelensky. Javani said that had the two leaders considered the consequences, they would not have fallen for, quote, the gamble of the risk-taking player Trump, unquote. He compared the move to Zelensky's miscalculation that provoked Russia, only this time the fallout would be far worse. Zelensky's blunder, Javani noted, brought Ukraine into direct conflict with Russia, but Aliyev and Pashinyan's White House deal, granting the United States a 99-year exclusive lease for the Zangur corridor, has united multiple powers around them. The destructive act, Javani warned, will not be ignored by Iran, Russia, or India. This was followed up by a comment where one of the administrators pointed out, not only would this not be ignored by any of these powers, if Russia doesn't get involved, we will go it alone in order to try to put a stop to this. They find it to be a big deal. It's obviously a big deal considering the United States just attacked them. Israel, Armenia, Azerbaijan seems to be forming some kind of axis. Azerbaijan attacked, or I can't say that, the Operation Spiderweb that hit Russia and the operation that hit Iran with drones and everything else that were very similar in the way that they acted seem to be coming out of Azerbaijan. Russia has been ratcheting up issues with Azerbaijan because they've been taking down criminals, mob bosses. Azerbaijan has been very pissed at this. And it's like, hey, why are you pissed at them taking down crime bosses? Well, it seems that they're pissed at them taking down crime bosses because those crime bosses have something to do with their government. So the point that I'm making here is it's been ratcheting up in regards to tensions that have been taking place between Russia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Iran, and how that unfurls, who knows? Now, Iran is being very strong right now in its language, but Iran has not necessarily been the fastest to act when things have been taking place and have been perfectly willing to try to make deals with monsters who had just been taking down their resistance network. So will they be willing to go it alone, or is this just language? I suspect this is just talk. I don't buy it, to be honest. Not with Iran. They don't seem to have the stones to do anything like this. They let their resistance network in Syria get taken down. They let Hezbollah get taken down. Would they move to take action on something that seems to be going after them? Well, they didn't take a move on Israel at all. So I'm skeptical, but I don't know, to be bluntly honest. Russia, I have not seen strongly worded statements by Russia about this. I've only seen them coming out of Iran. Maybe that's why one of the representatives for Iran pointed out, we will go this alone if we need to. I don't know what go it alone means in that case, but any way you look at it, that corridor is an issue, and that corridor is going to be an accelerant. And in the way that the U.S. is in negotiations with Russia, the main issue for the negotiations is what? Not land swaps. It's NATO expansion. And what are they doing right now, if not expanding once again closer to Russia's border? This territory is in the southern Caucasus. All of these regions are very close to Russia, Armenia, Azerbaijan. These are on the border of Russia. You're effectively putting a corridor, cutting off Iran, and allowing the U.S. to function in this region because they would effectively have a lease on it for the 99 years. How is this not effectively allowing, if not an expansion of NATO, an expansion of powers that will be working arm in arm with NATO going forward? They wouldn't call it NATO. It would be de facto. And they would do exercises and drills and all of the stuff with these with NATO powers, even though they most likely wouldn't call it NATO. I'm trying to point out that at the exact same time where Donald Trump is supposed to have a deal to quote unquote end the war, Donald Trump at this point seems to be opening up, or at the very least the US, I don't know if Donald Trump even knows where they are. The US seems to be opening up a new front against Russia and Iran, and will most likely allow Israel to have a more direct route to hit Iran also, not to mention cutting it up or carving it in parts. Just be aware. Just be aware. It is, I'm going to have Michael Maloof. He's going to talk about this. Also, I'm going to have Arno. He's going to come on a little bit later in order to kind of break down the Russian response to it. Because up to this point, as I pointed out, I haven't necessarily seen Russia say anything short of giving analysis on what is taking place and why it matters. I haven't seen quotes coming out of the government effectively giving a tongue lashing to it. They've been just muted. This kind of political language of, well, we don't want XYZ to affect the relationship between Azerbaijan and us. It's like, dude, that relationship is already torched on some level. Like, you're giving this political language, and these guys are making moves with the West in order to try to effectively screw you over, and was most likely responsible for an attack that took place. They hit you on your home soil. I understand the political language, but, you know, the things that are taking place that you need to respond to, being slow to respond. We've had Ukraine once. Do we need another one? Do we need another front open? And before I close on this one, this gets to the whole, what is going to happen at this negotiation? When you know as a flat fact that you are dealing with a bloodthirsty, mendacious country that can't be trusted. I don't say that because I love to say it, I say it because it's true. If you're talking about, again, I'll go down, Minsk agreements, 1 and 2, the overthrow of the Ukrainian government, the attacking Iran at the time where it was supposed to be in negotiations, the getting rid of the JCPOA, the, what was the other one? The blowing off, the missile treaties, the INF treaty. We get rid of that stuff when we just don't care or when it's not in our interests. We don't believe in these treaties and those type of things. I'm trying to point out that how do you deal with somebody like Donald Trump, who's all over the place? You're going to get 50 days. You're going to get 10 days. Okay, Russia blew up its own pipeline. Okay, no, it didn't. Or even going with this idea that Russia is the one that effectively started the conflict during the special military operation because they just wanted to take more land, as opposed to the overthrow of the Ukrainian government, where you started killing ethnic Russian Ukrainians and not living up to the Minsk agreements, meaning much of what has been coming out of the West have been effectively lies that they have built around themselves in order to justify this position of outright and hostile aggression against the Russians. Russophobia that has been steeped into their population, again, based off of lies and nonsense. How do you come to terms and deals with countries that are that mendacious? During Minsk 1 and 2, you get Angela Merkel coming out saying, we lied. We lied. A deal that was supposed to end the conflict we used in order to build up a huge military to go against the Russians. How do you prevent this from being Minsk III? How do you ensure that NATO doesn't expand? How do you ensure that any deal or agreement that you make, that they stick with it? So if you say, we are willing to have a ceasefire if Ukraine moves its troops, this is our territory, it is in our constitution, there's that. No expansion of NATO, no sharing of intelligence, the size of the Ukrainian military is decapitated. I mean, we were already in the process of decapitating them anyway, but you do it without putting bullets in people. Zelensky leaves. That government is pulled out, root and stem. How do you get an American president to do that? Now, maybe you can negotiate around the thing of, okay, well, Zelensky has to go, but the government can stay. And maybe we can negotiate around the size of the military. But obviously the sticking point is going to be these swaps, because they're not going to be any swaps. I don't even know what that would be. Lugansk, Donetsk, Kherson, Zaporozhye, Crimea. These are in the Russian constitution. Either you leave or we continue to shoot people in the face until we take it ourselves. That is the deal that we put forth with you. And honestly, Putin doesn't owe Trump anything, especially considering the United States was the main actor that overthrew the government that kicked off all of these events in the first place. Meaning you have 100,000 Russians, maybe 120, maybe 150,000 dead Russians that wouldn't be dead if the United States wasn't as provocative as it has been in expanding NATO to the border, knocking over Ukraine government in the first place. You owe us, and I mean us as US, nothing. Nothing at all. No, I don't think Putin's going to be an asshole. I think he's going to be very diplomatic about what he says, even if it's a diplomatic no. I don't even think he's going to come out and try to humiliate Trump. He's probably going to give some kind of diplomatic thing that they've agreed upon, even if it's, we agreed to both eat cheese 3 days a week. That's what we agreed upon. And Trump said, hey, got to win. Keep in mind, the Ukrainian military is collapsing. Trump knows it. And it's very possible that he is willing to exchange something heavy for that. But even if he is willing to exchange something heavy in order to just stop the fact that the Ukrainian military is about to collapse, will it go to Congress? No. Will Europe back it? Probably not. No. You may be able to bully Zelensky by effectively saying, I'm walking. Maybe. Hell, you may even be able to bully Europe by saying, I'm walking. Maybe. But you have to think of the level of pressure that is effectively around Trump with an entire institution that is against any sort of deal. You also need to realize that Donald Trump is not necessarily trying to end the war. He's trying to freeze a conflict with the idea to come back to that conflict later when the United States may be in a better position and when Russia may be in a weaker position. So let's revisit this idea of Azerbaijan and Armenia. Yes, they're tiny countries in the context of a country the size of Russia, but those are three fronts. Right? And if you're talking about European war, where the United States is kind of in the background as it moves to deal with China, let's say in their fever dreams, is that really where you want to be? Is that a weaker position or stronger position? I don't trust the US. It's that. And because I don't trust the US, any deal that comes out of this, I don't know how anyone else can trust it either. I hear my guest here, so let's go to my guest. We are joined with the man himself, Michael Maloof. How you doing, my man? You doing okay today?
So far, so good.
Good. Michael Maloof, he is former Senior Security Policy Analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, regular contributing analyst on RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service in the Department of Defense. Mike, I'm glad you could join me, man.
Well, thank you.
Give me your take on the Alaska Trump meeting. I'm very curious on your thoughts on this.
Well, it's going to be bilat for sure, and it will be with Putin and Trump only, and it will be it's really meant to try and renew the relationship, the diplomatic relationship. That is the real overarching geostrategic interest of Trump. It isn't necessarily Ukraine. It isn't the Europeans. As far as he's concerned, he wants to do other things with Putin. He's hoping that, and you're already seeing that Trump is criticizing Zelensky for not going along with what Trump has laid out as the deal, and even though and he says Zelensky says he refuses to negotiate. So it's really a toss up right now on just which way it goes. But I think, frankly, I think Putin's holding all the cards. He's
no, please finish. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think Putin is holding all the cards, and I think that Zelensky is going to be left with very little choice. But he has no bargaining chips himself. His back is up against the wall, and he now he's referring back to legal claims that he cannot negotiate land confiscation to the Russians because it's constitutionally forbidden. Even though the Rada could change the law tomorrow, it's not like our constitutional process. So he's obviously hoping that the Europeans, that is Zelensky, is hoping for the Europeans to come through with helping him to continue the war. He continues to lob in drones. There was another attack overnight, so he's been unrelenting in that regard. And I think Trump realizes that Zelensky just cannot, will not go along with anything. I think that's basically what's happening. And it's gonna be something that Putin will ultimately come out okay on. But I think the Europeans will look for ways to try to continue the war effort. But Trump basically wants out, and he's finished with it. I think he's finished with Europe, and I think he's finished with NATO.
You think Trump is finished with NATO? Oh, yeah. I don't think Trump is finished with NATO. I don't even think Trump is finished with Europe. I think he's okay. Well, let's step through it first. Have you noticed that one of the things they haven't been talking about in these states, because it seems like Europe and the US have been just talking to each other, like the media. They haven't. Russia's been very quiet on this front because, you know, they tend to do negotiations in private. They haven't been talking about NATO expansion, which is the main thing that started the war in the first place.
Yeah.
That's weird. It's almost like they keep using this term swaps. Okay, well, those areas are part of the Russian constitution at this point. What do you mean swaps? Like the situation for Ukraine is getting worse.
Yeah, you have a case here where the Europeans, particularly, and even Zelensky, cannot wake up to the reality of things. But now it's crunch time. They've been kicking the can. They've been getting, as long as they were getting supplies and ordnance, in which our own stockpiles now have basically been depleted. He was content to carry on. Well, that's coming to an end. All these things come to an end eventually, and I think he's reaching that point now. So that's why this is going to be a very critical meeting on Friday, and you're going to see some major changes. The Europeans are still hoping against hope, but their whole basis for promising what they can't deliver to Zelensky is really based upon the U.S. backing them up. They can't do it. They can't afford it. They can't afford the arms to Europe, and in addition, a lot of these arms that they want, particularly the missiles, more sophisticated missiles, will take years to build. It isn't like it's going to be an overnight shipment of this mass amounts of Patriots or anything. We're short, and the Europeans are short, and they have to think of their own defenses, just like the U.S. is. And I think what Trump really has in mind is something even larger in terms of trying to renew the relationship with Russia. I think he will look toward trying to work out bilateral deals with him, particularly in the Arctic, and also maybe renewing the a form of the Intermediate Range Ballistic Missile Treaty. So I think that these are considerations. These are larger geostrategic issues that Trump envisions, rather than just being dealing with the Ukraine issue, which is holding up everything else.
How could Russia trust anything coming out of the U.S.?
Can't. They can't. I mean, we have violated every agreement. There were 6 agreements, and I've pinpointed them in the past that led in which there would be no NATO expansion. Well, things happen, and that indivisibility is what the word is that they used, and that means you don't arm the West at the expense of the East. I mean, that's basically fundamentally what's occurred. And when you've got NATO countries now right on the border, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, they're really sort of insignificant in terms of any military power. But the fact is that they're there, and Ukraine, of course, would be the major problem. And then you have Belarus, and that's why you're seeing now Putin looking to put the Oreshniks in Belarus.
Yeah. And then they tried to overthrow Georgia.
And London will only be like 5 minutes away from being hit by these Oreshniks if they decide to put their own troops into Ukraine and whatever. Then they become fair game. So
Trump just sent nukes, gravity nukes to the UK.
I know he's put in tactical nukes. They're at Lakenheath, but RAF Lakenheath was a sister base of ours at one time. That when I was there, yeah, I was at RAF Alconbury and Lakenheath in Alconbury. They're a cluster of bases in the East Anglia area, in the Middlesex area, and we used to joke that UK was nothing more than an American aircraft carrier. With all the bases we had.
Oh, that's funny. They tried to overthrow Georgia to use it as a second front. That was the other thing. That was something recent that happened this year. Was it this year? I think it was this year, or maybe last year. But either way, I guess I'm saying I agree with you. I don't know how you trust the U.S. in this context. And so how do you...
Well, that's the whole thing. The element of trust is gone, and the Russians have made no secret of that. They can't... Any country at this point that wants to make an agreement with the U.S., they're going to have to think twice, maybe 3 times. Look, we're even sanctioning allies.
Yeah.
We're even sanctioning the developing countries because they happen to be a member of BRICS. Are you kidding me?
I guess
that's what, and Trump is threatening that.
How do you make a deal without it turning out to be Minsk 3?
You can't. Trump is basically declaring economic warfare against the world with his sanctions threats and tariffs. Yeah. And that's why you're seeing the development of a multipolar world order for that very reason. And it is very real. And they're beginning like India. India thought it was a good buddy of the United States until it got slapped with those tariffs. Well, that's economic warfare in their minds. And they happen to be a member of BRICS, a prominent member of BRICS, one of the founding members. And Trump has threatened all these sanctions on all these countries that belong to BRICS. That's secondary sanctions. That's in addition to any country that trades with Russia. And you can't sustain that.
I guess what I'm getting at is, from the standpoint of making, let's say, a deal, Minsk 3. I guess you've had Minsk 1 and 2. Minsk 1 and 2, Angela Merkel came out, effectively admitted we allied, and they used it to build up a huge military, effectively saving Ukraine. Istanbul agreements, again, blown off. Boris Johnson comes in and blows it off. How do you prevent this from being Minsk 3? Like, that's seemed to be the difficult part. How do you ensure that there's no NATO expansion? How do you ensure that they don't provide intelligence, that they limit the military size? How do you, do you get my point? Like, you're trying to make a deal with somebody that is fundamentally dishonest in a country that's fundamentally dishonest in the way that it engages. How does Putin shake his hand and be confident that any of that goes through? That's assuming anything goes through in the first place. I'm very cynical about it.
The trust is broken. You had 2 U.S. presidents make that pledge to Russian leaders before Putin not to expand NATO, and a Secretary of State, James Baker. And yet they went ahead and did it anyway. And it was under Clinton that they began the expansion rule. So you can't trust. I think from the perspective of the Russians, they're going to think twice, and so they have to have some leverage, and that's what their leverage is going to be: an expansion and functioning, a viable functioning of BRICS to respond to the U.S. economic sanctions and threats, because it does constitute economic warfare. And even the members of BRICS, the partners, are beginning to poo-poo it. Trump thought, well, I'll launch all these tariffs on all these BRICS countries. Well, they're basically saying, well, we're just going to sidestep you. We don't need to trade with you. It's not absolutely essential. We'll trade with people within the Eurasian Union that we have established through BRICS. That's 40. That could be potentially 40 countries.
Yeah.
And they're trading in their own currency, so they bypass the use of the dollar, and then that diminishes the importance of the dollar over time. And that's what Trump is recoiling against, because under the Bretton Woods, I think in 47 or 49, it was supposed to be regarded as the world currency, the dollar, that is. And that seems to be, it's not going to go away, but it seems to be diminished a bit. And even over time, it's not going to go away, but it will be diminished if we continue along this trend. But they're still going to use the dollar. So with this alternative multipolar system, financial system, they're able to trade both in dollars and in and away from the SWIFT, not only in the SWIFT system, but in their own system under the new development bank that has been created under BRICS.
I see you're focusing on the tariffs or the sanctions.
Well, in fact, economics is everything.
It is, but you have a huge military that was on the Russian border that was trying to effectively kill, just killed 100,000 Russians. Russia killed like 1.5 million of them. Meaning there's a military conflict that's taking place that Trump is trying to end. I understand your point about the economic sanctions, though. I do get it.
In terms of, I'm talking about terms of leverage. Where is the leverage in the future to keep people in line? So that if they make an agreement, how do they retain that agreement?
I see.
Right now, there's no trust.
I see.
Consequently, you develop an alternative system to show them that, well, we can revert to this, and this is what is happening because we can't trust you any longer. And now there's a history of mistrust that is very profound. And I don't see how the Russians can really trust what even comes out of the agreement, if there is any agreement on Friday. And we've already seen how Zelensky is recoiling.
Yes.
He's not going along, notwithstanding whatever arrangement that he and Trump had made economically in terms of minerals and mineral exploitation, whatever. We don't even hear any discussion about that anymore.
I don't even know if they have it at this point. I mean, the lithium reserves, the stuff that Russia's been taking recently, it's been taking stuff off the board that belongs.
Well, the rare earths are mostly in the East anyway. I mean, in fact, that's where most of Ukraine's industrial might is exactly. In the East, not the West. But
I found this video apparently of Donald Trump trying to rough up Putin in order to get Putin to fall in line. It was a leaked audio file. I want to play it. I want to get your take on it.
Vladimir, if you don't end that war in Ukraine in 50 days, I'm going to do something very strong.
Oh, God, this again. Okay, right, cool.
What's that? Cool? I'll show you cool. Now you have 10 days. Okay, maybe 12.
Love it. Can't wait.
Okay, that's it.
Ow! Holy shit! Why did you hit me? Why did you hit me?
Look, somebody's going to pay the price for Vladimir not listening to me, and it's...
That video is the funniest thing in the world to me today. I swear it is. And that
but it underscores what I've just been talking about.
Exactly. Exactly.
It underscores everything that I've just described. And by going after the partners to Russia, like India, he's managed success. Trump has managed successfully piss off the Indians, and at the same time show his hand to Russia in terms of any negotiation. But tariffs and sanctions at this point for Russia are almost meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you go into Russia today, and I was there last October, November. You wouldn't think there was any sanctions.
You don't see them. And that is the funniest thing in the world, because as you pointed out, it is exactly what took place. He did not put the sanctions on China, the secondary sanctions.
Right.
And Vance was like, it's complicated.
There's a strategy that they're undertaking, which I think is based upon a false premise. The whole fundamental strategy is to embrace and ingratiate yourself toward, to work something out with Russia with the hope that they'll split from China. But China and Russia, we drove both of those countries into a virtual alliance. Military, economic, yeah, they got some issues back and forth, but fundamentally and predominantly, they're close, much closer than they were during the Cold War. We used to use China to spy on the then Soviet Union in the good old days, and they were cooperative.
Not anymore. And it seems that they're trying to push India closer and closer to.
And Russia. I mean, India today still takes most of its military equipment from Russia. There's been some changes, but it's predominantly there. But plus, they're in the neighborhood. The trade is there, and so and the same with China. You see Modi and Xi Jinping now are coming together to work out things, and notwithstanding their border dispute, and they're working closer. They're all members of BRICS. They're all members of the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So, and that has become a major economic and somewhat a military force, a Eurasian force to counteract the West. And it's being successful. And you're seeing that the Europeans are basically now being blocked out of China. And so where do they turn for their exports? European countries are basically an exporting country, but so that their economy is shot because of high costs for fuel, which they brought on themselves by voluntarily cutting off their cheap gas from Russia. So then they're buying LNG from the U.S. at far greater price, and we're draining them. And they don't like it, but they need the energy. And now we're not going to be far away from the fall and the winter when the colder seasons begin to come in, and they've got to be ready. So you got to have all these things are you have to project ahead of time. And the Europeans are only are only in a reaction mode, and they don't have any alternative. They've run out of alternatives.
One of the other things I want to point to is that Donald Trump, simultaneously, while supposedly going to make a deal with Vladimir Putin in order to, quote unquote, end the war, he is also just did this. This is between Pashtian and Olivier. I think that's how you pronounce it. I usually just read the name. But this is the conversation that's taking place here. Donald Trump is triumphant. Look at me, I got a big deal between these two.
The President of the United States, the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan, and the Prime Minister of the Republic of Armenia will now sign the joint declaration on the outcomes of the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity Summit.
That's really
They will
beautiful.
sign 3 copies in English. The President of the
All right. Now, they are doing this in order to form a corridor that the United States is going to effectively take over, supposedly for 99 years. Iran is flipping out about this. Iran makes a point of saying you are effectively acting as if you're Zelensky. And I'm paraphrasing, but the mistake that Zelensky made will be minor in comparison to what you are effectively doing here. So Russia knows this is an issue. Iran knows this is an issue, especially considering that Russia has been going after Azerbaijan, or let's say criminals of Azerbaijan. The state of Azerbaijan has been having feelings about it. And Armenia, of course, feels some kind of way because Russia didn't jump to its aid when it got a mud hole stumped in it during the Nagorno-Karabakh war. This is surrounding Russia also, right? I mean, like, meaning if NATO expansion is the main issue that was the driver of the war, and then Donald Trump goes around and says, and now I'm also going to expand closer to your borders and put a military presence on your border through this corridor. That looks a little dicey, right? Am I missing something?
It's supposed to be a development corridor, but you're right. It's a soft underbelly of Russia. It is the soft underbelly. The Caucasus historically have been the soft underbelly. As to what his influence was in getting them together was basically, look, if you don't work out a deal, I'm not going to trade with you, but you have all these opportunities. So once again, he's using the economic leverage to bring them in. But in terms of his influence and getting them to talk, well, it was all based on economics. And but it does reflect an influence that will, American influence that will enter the area along with U.S. companies. So we'll see to what extent they prosper, the Armenians and the Azerbaijans, or the Azeris, as we call them, to see to what extent that they actually prosper from this economic development. But it does reflect more of an encroachment of American influence in an area that has been predominantly under Russian influence all these years. And it does. And I think the idea is to develop a wedge to bust up the primary players in BRICS, as well as the SCO. So this is another subtle effort at economic warfare against the Eurasian Union that has developed here over time, and it does reflect an extension of U.S. influence.
I could be wrong, but I thought that the U.S. was using, it was like military or something like that on the corridor for 99 years.
No, it's meant to be mostly economic development and build companies and factories and run pipelines and stuff like that.
Yeah. I
haven't heard any word of military bases as such being set up.
No, not bases. I didn't think it was a base. I thought it was, I need to find that part. I didn't think it was a military base. I thought it was just kind of, the U.S. was effectively going to have control of it for.
Well, there'll be no doubt that there may be U.S. involvement in the and influence in there. And I'm sure undoubtedly a number of these companies will be NGOs, which will be CIA cutouts. Mm-hmm. So it's meant to influence the local populations over time toward U.S. influence, and this constitutes a potential concern to Putin, I'm sure.
Do you think Iran would actually take action in this? So one of the Iranians, his name is, if I can find the name right here, IRGC Aliyev and Pashtian's Zaigzer gamble is worse than Zelensky's mistake. He pointed out he's an IRGC political deputy general Giovanni. He warned Armenia, Prime Minister Nicole Pashinyan, and President Aliyev that their decision to involve the United States and NATO into the Caucasus, quote, an even greater mistake than Zelensky's, unquote. Giovanni said that the two leaders considered the consequences, or have they considered the consequences, they would not have fallen for, quote, the gamble and the risk player Trump, unquote. He compared the move to Zelensky's miscalculation to provoke Russia, only this time the fallout could be far worse. And even in some of the other commentary, they pointed out, we don't need to wait for Russia if we need to respond. Do you think Iran?
I don't know that Iran will immediately attack. Now they've had some considerable influence in that region themselves for quite some time. And the other player who's had influence in that region, who's gone unnamed at this point, is Turkey. Turkey's influence there is great, not to mention Israel's and Ukraine's, because of the relationship with Azerbaijan against Armenia. But the northern part of Iran is Azeris. I mean, these are Iranian people from Azerbaijan who have moved in over time into northern Iran. So it's the influence there, the Iranian influence with Azerbaijan is great. Plus, they have access to pipelines into the Caspian and what have you. So it really complicates and makes the entire Caucasus a brand new flashpoint in the very near future, given all of these players who are focusing into this region. And Russia's going to be watching it very, very carefully.
I guess that's kind of my point, right? Like, a lot of the media is talking about this.
I think they're really all bothered by the fact that the U.S. is even there.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I am too. I thought we were supposed to focus on America first, you know. Again, Trump is not in control of his own foreign policy.
But see, I think Trump would have went for this. I think this is totally up Trump's alley. He's like, hey, I can get a corridor. I can name it after Trump, corridor or peace or whatever he's going to call it, or economic prosperity.
It's all about stroking his ego. It has nothing to do with in-depth thinking and knowledge on the entire subject matter. He lacks that. He only goes by the superficial stuff of how it makes him look good and increases his popularity. And oh, by the way, I solved another potential world crisis, and I should be getting the Nobel Peace Prize.
Right.
Right. You know, it just never ends.
If I'm not mistaken, Armenia said that, like in that in the state, it was like, you know, I'm nominating Trump for the Peace Prize. Yeah,
it's getting to be a joke.
It is a joke. I mean, like the notion that you're pushing countries to nominate you for the Peace Prize. He
makes this agreement between India and Pakistan, promising them economic. If they would stop fighting, he'll do economic deals. But then he turns around and slaps a 50% tariff on India.
India said that Donald Trump had nothing to do with them coming together.
Yeah, he's right. But you know, that was the incentive. But they for their own reasons, they decided to quell the thing. But Trump took credit for that as well by saying, well, I brought an end to the conflict in India between India and Pakistan because I offered them a deal. Well, and now that deal is what I'm wondering about the deal, because he just slapped those tariffs on India. I mean, you don't shake one hand and then slap him with the other. That's basically what he's done.
What do you think the chances are that they use Azerbaijan and Armenia as a second front? I mean, both of these countries are on the border of Russia.
It's subtly turning into that. It actually began under the Biden administration. Now, we've always had a presence in Georgia and somewhat in Azerbaijan and in Baku, and very little in Armenia. But what's intriguing is that after the Azerbaijan-Armenian shaking hands and exchanging signed agreements, the prime minister of Armenia actually called Putin and gave him a debrief on what happened.
Did he?
Yes.
What the hell?
What is that? That reflects that he is looking, even though the Armenians can't stand him, yet he's now, and he wanted to look more westward. He's now all of a sudden beginning to head back toward, looking back toward Russia a little bit. And so that's, and the Russians have one base in Armenia now. And they've talked in the past of trying to set up a land corridor. And right now they fly everything into that base. The Russians do. What the Russians were thinking of with Georgia was establish a land bridge through Georgia to get to that base. But for now, that's been put on ice. It would go through Abkhazia, which is what they, but actually go near to Tbilisi. but if it struck, it would go right down the middle of Georgia. But I haven't heard any more discussion about that recently.
Speculate for me. What is Pastor John up to? Because I don't know if I buy him. He was very salty after losing that war with Azerbaijan.
Yeah.
And he, on some level, seemed to blame Putin for it, despite the fact that it's like, dude, you don't have any claim to Nagorno-Karabakh. Like, you've never made the claim to it, nor basically the rest of the world sees this as the Azeris. So,
Well, frankly, notwithstanding this so-called agreement between the two countries,
yeah,
Nagorno-Karabakh still remains a contentious issue. It was never resolved into this. So it still remains on the table as a contentious issue. You still have Armenians who were living there. And
yes.
And, you know, they've been that way for quite some time. They refused to move. Now, Azerbaijan had a war, what was it, last year with the Armenians, and won, and was supposed to be kicking out all the Armenians. Apparently that hasn't all transpired just yet. I guess they're still working on arrangements to vacate the Armenians who have lived there for generations. But it's you don't hear that much about it, but it still is a contentious issue between those two countries, and it could flare up again. There's no guarantee with any of these arrangements that anything's going to work out permanently. I mean, none of these agreements, they could turn tomorrow, and I think the same is going to happen between Trump and Putin. There's so much mistrust today between leaders. That's why your leaders do not negotiate, which is what's happening here. They come in and just sign the agreement that the lower staff people worked out an arrangement.
Right.
But that's not what's happening here. So who do you appeal to if you can't agree? You go to war, ultimately. Or it'll be status quo and things will just rumble along. But U.S. cannot afford to continue to supply Ukraine. Now, what we're seeing here is a difference without a distinction occurring. We heard J.D. Vance say, well, look, we're not going to be supplying Ukraine anymore with arms. Yet, he's saying, well, the Europeans can buy arms, we'll manufacture them, and then the Europeans can give them to the Ukrainians.
Yes.
You know, as I say, it's a difference without a distinction. And I think that still keeps us in the fray indirectly.
Yeah, I mean, Trump wants to pivot to China. He wants Europe to be able to take over the responsibility.
Yeah, he wants to pivot elsewhere. He's got the Caucasus to worry about.
The Caucasus.
But I think the influence, historically the influences in the region are going to be overtaken by the Turks and ultimately, and even by the Iranians. I just don't see where U.S. influence is. I think U.S. influence in that region over the long run could be rather limited. I may be wrong, but they just are out of place. It's not their area of influence.
Yeah.
And Iran and Turkey have historical influence in that region.
Mm-hmm. We'll see. We will see. Right now, Iran is flipping out. they're losing it.
Well, yeah. Well, they feel a little picked upon right now. They just got bombed, and
well, there's that, right? There's that.
Yeah. But they can withstand. But they're going to stand up to any. I don't envision Trump bombing them again. And at the same time, there's no more talk of sanctions against the Iranians unless the Europeans do snapbacks based upon the lack of compliance with the old JCPOA, which the U.S. dropped out of in 2018. So the fact that Iran is in BRICS is pivotal in the SCO to Russia and China makes it and they have developed this way around Western sanctions, I think in the long run is going to serve them better because it helps them to become self-sufficient, and they develop an alternative to the Western system, which was imposed upon them anyway, and which has been used as an economic weapon over time against them. And I think they have found a way now to get around that.
Michael Maloof. Michael Maloof is a former senior security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, and regular contributing analyst on RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service in the U.S. Department of Defense, and he is a damn good friend of the show. Michael, thank you for this, man. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You have a good one. Be safe.
Yep. Thank
All
you.
right. And I see my man in the background, Arno Dele. What's going on, man? How you doing today? This evening. It's evening for you.
I'm doing great, Jamal. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Just trying to keep track of time zones. Yeah, doing okay. Long day, but I'm okay. Arnaud Dev, he is author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. Here's his book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of America's Political Consensus. You are the person I want to talk to today. I'm very curious on your thoughts about the Alaska summit, that is happening in Alaska. That hits me with a bit of trepidation. I got to be honest with you. And B, what do you think they're going to get accomplished, if anything, in Alaska?
Well, I guess it's the question on everybody's mind right now. Since we don't really have much information on the substance, on what's on the agenda to discuss. I mean, yes, of course, Ukraine features front and center, but under what contours, under what formula, this remains pretty much, the mystery right now.
Yeah.
What we can somewhat develop an idea for is that owing to the sense of panic that has seemingly grasped European capital and Kiev, it might be something that ultimately sets the course for a somewhat settlement of the conflict. We'll leave it there at this point. It's way too early to call it, but I'm always looking at the reactions left, right, and center. I mean, sure, sometimes we may imagine that it's a gigantic pantomime and everybody's playing cosplay to somehow induce people into believing the exact opposite. But here, no, I really don't think so. If anything, because the Europeans are going to be left on the hook on this. J.D. Vance a couple of days ago reiterated this in no uncertain terms. We do not discourage the Europeans to remain involved in the Ukraine conflict, conditioned on them buying American weapons, of course. But in as far as we're concerned, we're done. We're done with this, or at least we are setting the stage to say that if somehow our efforts to diplomatically settle this, to save face, leads to somehow this reminiscence of quagmire, we'll just say, hey, I'm washing my hands from this. I tried everything I could. You guys are on your own. We're not discouraging you from doing what you feel you must be doing, but that'll be without us. And of course, you must buy our weapons. Did I mention that? Buy our weapons.
Do you see a U.S. president being able to do that? Wiping his hands of it and saying, "All right, we're out." Like if you don't want to take my deal, Zelensky, if you Europeans want to continue to push, then fine, we're walking. Can he do that? Do you see him doing that? He hasn't done that up to this point. Maybe he's fed up.
Yeah, I've heard this argument that owing to pressures from the blob and the media and so on and so forth, Trump per se won't be able to make it out. But I submit that there is factional infighting within the blob right now, and some no unsubstantial faction of that blob wants out to focus on other things. They're not against, and we'll get to it, I'm sure, within 30 minutes that we have allocated for. They're not against the idea of setting things up, setting the table for the opening of a second front eventually down the road. That will be something that we'll discuss in the context of Zangezur. But there is this increasingly on the rise faction within the security apparatus of the United States. They are called the prioritizer or the restrainers. They go either by that name. And those guys, they want out. They want to subcontract this Ukraine thing to the Europeans, make them, if put your money where your mouth is, if you really feel that politically, everything depends on your containing Russian neo-imperial desires. Fine, we're not against it per se, but we ourselves need to pivot. We need to do this pivot and fast in East Asia. So that's my take on this. The outcome of this factional infighting within the blob in terms of policy, medium long-term policy, will determine whether or not Trump is able to set the stage for some kind of a temporary, somewhat, we could say a cold peace. Let's put it this way. I don't think it'll resolve remotely everything Russia has asked for, but they might have bought themselves 10 to 15 years if the whole process goes according to plan. Yes.
I see what you mean. It's not that this is eternal. It's
nothing is eternal.
Yeah.
But look at it this way: the embodiment of the prioritizer faction is J.D. Vance. So we got about 3.5 years of Trump. J.D. Vance will make sure under his watch that this arrangement remains in place. Assuming he serves 2 terms, that's 8 and 3. That's almost 12 years right there. What happens after that? I don't know. But J.D. Vance wants to go to East Asia.
You're very optimistic. You're very optimistic. The reason why I said that, let me explain why I said that. Trump sits down, Putin says, what I need is Lugansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, Kherson, and
Crimea.
That's what I need. I need no
and a clause that says no Ukrainian NATO. That's central as well. Yeah.
I need them to put that into law, meaning Ukraine. I need them to put it into law. I may even need the Europeans to sign it themselves and put it into law. I need your Congress to sign it and put it in the law. Now, right off the bat, it's not going to take place in Europe. It's not going to take place in the US. It may take place in Ukraine, which may be enough. I need to limit the military size. If you want a ceasefire, then I need you to stop giving them weapons. I need Europe to stop giving them weapons immediately, right off the bat. Like
that stopping weapon, I doubt it. I think the Russians actually said they would not be against the US providing weapons, continuing arming Ukraine after a settlement's been reached.
I know, but what's the difference between that and building up another military on the border of Russia?
Well, none. One friend of mine would say, the distinction is not a difference. But,
But that's kind of the point, right? Like, one of Russia's demands was, if you want a ceasefire, you need to stop.
Yeah, but look at it this way. What's the alternative right now? I mean, politically, what's the alternative? Do you want 3.5 years of Trump being conditioned by that failure to bring some kind of resolution to Ukraine? With everything that this implies in terms of escalation, are you sure you're going to get a better deal with somebody else after him, or what will have happened there? Will that condition any kind of talks with future presidents?
I know what under that model, you're gonna have to accept whatever Trump gives you if that's the case. I think
you need to make sure you get Istanbul Plus approved. That's basically it.
Yeah.
But if you can get Istanbul Plus, so that means the 4 regions, Crimea, and a constitutional amendment with some kind of guarantor state, although we know what guarantor states, have led to in prior iterations. But, politically, I think the Russian could live with that. And some security guarantees bearing on technical discussions between experts from both countries, dealing with long-range missile and the capability for the new regions to be protected from those weapons,
Right.
or to somehow have time to recalibrate, or because Russia had spoken about this repeatedly, getting this kind of strategic depths to make sure that they can protect the new regions from those kind of weapons. So you may negotiate that on top, to make sure that, and there will be hard press the other side, that is to refuse that, because if your intent is to have this deal work, this is not something that should somehow pose a problem. So so the five regions, the 4 new regions, Crimea, constitutional amendment on Ukraine remaining out of NATO, technical arrangements on the protection of long-range missile for the 4 regions, and potentially, not potentially, it has to be discussed as well, respect for minorities, Russian-speaking minorities, which some of them live in the western part of Ukraine. We always tend to assume they all live in the east, but there are some living in the west.
Right.
So Russian has to remain, as it was for many years, a protected language constitutionally. So you may have to, So would that take place through the adoption of a constitutional amendment, or would that be somehow reactivated? Because I don't believe this amendment, this clause in the constitution was declared invalid in the new constitution. They just somehow disregarded it. But and obviously for the last 2 points that I just mentioned, you will need to hold new elections. So that would be the first thing. All new elections, get your new lease on life, even though you're still dealing with somewhat of a Banderite iteration of the Ukraine government. You would still you get a new start, a fresh start. So assuming it's Zelensky, they get their guys in, they get themselves a new veneer, a new cover story, and somehow Zelensky needs to consolidate his power. He needs to give what people want in Ukraine right now. He's the old soldier. This is how people look at him. He actually inspires a measure of respect in Ukraine. Even though he's a sorry ass military man, if you ask me, but that's another story. But he's known as the guy who actually went against Zelensky during the famous counter-offensive, right? So that would be enough to somehow rig an election and get him in. And the whole thing would be put to a slow burn for a decade and a half.
You're replacing one Nazi with another Nazi. And a government
that
is
well, a banderized, of course. Well, at least a puppet for sure. I don't think those guys are, whether it's Zelensky or him, ideologically inhabitated by banderism. They're just thieves. They're just
he has a picture
thugs.
of Moscow burning on his office desk or something like that, or like on his office wall. He's like, this is my crazy office.
Yeah, but you have to get out of the black and white. It's a lot more nuanced than this in those kind of regime. It's very clownesque, and some of those people who somehow manage to survive until the very bitter end, to the extent there's it comes to an end, are those who actually are double downing in the the symbology of it, right? Doesn't really necessarily mean that they are trained ideologically to a T in every single task that they do per day. You have some people like this. No matter what they do, something the most insignificant, thing, whether it's about having dinner or going to the restroom or having a tidy or organized house. Yeah, I mean, those ideologies are actually kind of like a third legs, kind of a cane that you use to conceal your own neurotic, or your shortcomings. So it doesn't mean that you are, a pure, one of the prototypes, this kind of alpha, the homelander of Ukraine,
Right.
Not at all. Yeah, and even Homelander, you look at it, he's very weak. He has a lot of insecurities. So those guys are no different. They're just sociopaths. They wouldn't give a hoot about the whole ideological content. They just, they just want, how can I grab a maximum, make out with a maximum of money, put some of that money or my loot abroad, get myself some properties. It's a means to an end to those people. They have no spine. They have no ethic. They're just, I mean, they're willing to be puppet for foreign powers. So they don't give a hoot about Ukraine. I mean, as a banderist, at least be a patriot. Are you even that? No, they're not. They're perfectly okay with.
No, I'm not.
Yeah. No, I mean, even if you get into their mind, I mean, as a banderist, can you at least say, I'm a patriot, I'm a Ukrainian patriot, and then you add the banderism on top of it. But those guys don't even care about this. So,
I guess my thing is that really in the best interest of Russia at that point? I mean, I understand the idea, right? Like from my point of view, these guys have murdered or killed 100,000 Russians. Even if you killed 1 million of them, they still killed 100,000 of you in a war that was effectively provoked when the government was overthrown. And so I look at it as Ukraine is just a proxy for the United States. You're negotiating with the United States right now to try to effectively end the war, but the United States is not going to try or stop trying. I mean, for God's sake, the Azerbaijan Armenia corridor, the United States is trying to take control of that with the idea that Armenia and Azerbaijan are now somehow buddies of the West, where they're going to be doing military exercises and strategic partnerships. Okay, so the soft underbelly of Russia, and for that matter, Iran, is now exposed to these two, yes, small countries, but two countries nonetheless that can be another front against Russia. Meaning, so in one sense, the U.S. is saying, hey, let's make a deal. Let's bring down hostilities. Hey, no expansion of NATO as we expand countries that we're going to effectively try to use for security reasons also.
Exactly.
Meaning the U.S. is not stopping in this process.
Well, my answer to that, well, I mean, it's been like this since 1856 in the Crimean War. So it's nothing new. This century pro-secular animosity, adversity, and desire to reduce Russian to the most congruous portion. So the Russians are used to it. It's just that sometimes you have hot phases, sometimes you have cold phases. Those guys think in terms of decades, at minima, in terms of decades.
Maybe this is me being
So they have integrated this in their foreign policy. They know that the US cannot be trusted. Not even the paper on which the ink still smells, is drying up. They have integrated that, but you have to micromanage every single thing and somehow assemble something that looks like a strategy that allows you to survive to fight another day. And in the meantime, you prepare for the next round. Look at Iran. That's exactly what they've been doing for 43 years.
Yes.
They're micromanaging tirelessly what appears to be constant harassment, and it is constant harassment, threats, demeaning of their sovereignty, if not their culture, if not their very raison d'être. But they don't let it destabilize them. They remain calm and composed, and it served them well so far. So sure, it's not funny every day to be an Iranian living in Iran. I'll grant you that.
Yeah.
But what's the alternative? You're going to revert back to the days of the Shah and be just you're talking about a 5,000-year-old civilization.
I swear.
So, they know where they stand.
Yeah.
So it's not just like a season on Netflix. It's a little longer than that. Those people think in terms of And wait, it doesn't, because we're talking assuming the US is always going to have the initiative, always to have this capacity to print money to finance those foolish foreign policies objectives. But they're getting weaker by the year. We could have said not so long ago, we'll have to wait a decade to see a qualitative change for the worst in terms of US ability, capacity to be a nuisance. But now it's almost every year we see this. It starts slowly, like the bathtub, and now we're getting to the lowest tier of the bathtub content, and the water, you can see the it's happening. It's happening. So, look at the BRICS now. They've taken the measure of the US. It's almost like Gulliver and the Lilliputian. When they tie him up on the beach. That's what we're dealing with right now. And so the guy, the more he's trying to break from his restraints, the more he exerts, strength and energy until sheer and exhaustion. Not to mention, internally, the country is about to explode. I wouldn't be surprised, like the former head of the LPDR in Russia, a liberal party, said, Zelensky. I wouldn't be surprised. I think Medvedev even alluded to it a couple of times that, within the next 5 years, we could have secessions of some states. We thought this would happen under Biden, but it could happen very well under any administration, no matter what party is in power. Because the internal contradictions are so deeply ingrained. We just have two strands of people who hate each other's guts. Let's see, the very notion that the other faction exists is unacceptable for the other. This is where we are.
When we do politics abroad, it just comes back home to haunt us. Also, we've had incompetent leadership. Like, if you think,
and blowback leads to nemesis. Yes.
Yeah, we've had incompetent.
This has been said before. Yeah,
that have been accelerants for the most part. Like,
Joe Biden, the problem is there is no leadership. There is no leadership. There's competing interest.
Yes, that's fair. No, that's fair.
Who are just basically, feeding at the trough.
No,
so
that's fair.
There's no leadership per se.
But they do have people who have wants. Like Joe Biden has wants. He's not an empty void. He has geopolitical wants where he thinks he's more, this is righteous for us to try to take down the Russian government. That's what he thinks. That's his guiding.
It's a role. They're playing roles. They're playing parts. To me, that's my take on it. Since JFK, they're all playing parts.
But I don't think Trump has any values. I think he's
no, but this guy is the guy is the terminal incarnation of what being a CEO of America Inc. is about. You can take anybody off the street, groom him, give him talking points, and he'll go with it. That's what it is. And if anything, you have this marketing, mogul, real estate mogul, Don from New York, who enjoys the most basest, things that somebody with a measure of wealth can envision doing for decades on, from that point on, to the extent it reaches, the ability to get away with it without anybody telling him, no, don't do it. Respect yourself, respect your body, man, No, the guy doesn't care. Everything goes. It just drips out. It's like everything is extravagant. Everything is just but it's America today. And I would even venture to say maybe it's been America all along. It's just that in the 1950s, where things were a little bit more subtle, there was some kind of plaid suit to conceal what's underneath.
More excess.
They were able to be somehow more deft at concealing the real nature of the regime. But today, oh my God, I think the IQ level has gone down. Same with the Israelis, despite what's going on right now. The Israeli leaders of 40, 45, 50 years ago would have never allowed themselves to be exposed the way this regime has the last 2 years or almost 2 years, because they've lost the memorial rent, they've lost the memorial credit. They've lost everything. Their reputation is in tatter.
Impunity.
And so the same thing.
It's like,
but impunity never lasts. It never lasts.
Imagine if you had a kid and you never corrected that kid. How would that kid act? It's that. Same thing for
Yeah,
America.
it's that. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
that.
Well, it's been a long process in coming, to be sure. What we're seeing now, same thing, I would have the same analysis, is the result of a long period of allowing this regime to get away literally with murder, and now with genocide, sure. But now there's no, I mean, there's no pretense to try to say, no, you're not getting it. It's only just the guy who's in charge now. No, you got 75% of Israelis who back this guy, no matter what he does. They all vote for him over and over again to such extent that they call him King Bibi. Since the creation of the state has been all pieces of terms put together, the longest serving prime minister. So they love him there.
What do you think Putin would accept? I mean, what you told me before, you think Putin would accept it? You think he would take that and call it a day?
Yeah,
Effectively,
definitely.
Bless.
Like I say, for Oblast, Crimea,
Right.
constitutional amendment bearing on neutrality, respect for ethnic minorities, Russian minorities, and technical arrangement as far as protecting the new regions from long-range missiles. Yes.
Now, if
and then the incentive to give it like to put some sweets in it and to make it palatable to Congress. Ideas of a condominium partnership for Arctic Circle, maybe Russian proper exploration, development of to put some sweets in the spaghetti, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Because everybody wants to make money in the end. Yeah, they'll take it. It's a perfect deal. It's a perfect deal. It's a perfect deal.
It's not about I'm telling you.
Just placate the first generation neocons, all those former Belarusians and Moldovans and all those. Because that's really who they are. That's really the problem. Those are the people we're alluding to.
Have you noticed?
Just placate them, send them into a closet, office in a state or the DOD,
right?
And that's it. You've had your shot. You fucked it up, right?
Have you noticed that when Trump brings world leaders to the country, like von der Leyen, what's the guy name?
World leader? Von der Leyen? In the same sentence?
We can put it in quotes, right? Anytime he brings a world leader, quote unquote, Keir Starmer, any of these guys.
You mean the EU clowns? Yes.
Yes, he would bring them in, and he would make fun of them in some way. So for von der Leyen, he thought it was just completely hilarious that he was able to humiliate her in a trade deal. And he would
same in China, because she's nobody. She's never been elected.
I know, but I'm trying to point
incompetent.
Out from his point of view, and from many of these people's point of view, it's not about just the money. It's also about this notion of power, political clout. Can I get an advantage?
Yeah.
What can I get out of this? How can I show it? And you have a lot of people who are totally neocons. It's not about the money. It's about the geopolitical thing where they're like foaming at the mouth about Russia. And when Donald Trump comes back, whatever deal he has to Putin, it is not going to be enough. Short of Putin jumping off the Kremlin.
Yeah,
and
but
they'll be like, not smart enough.
Yeah, well, but they can't. I mean, they can voice off anything they want, and they will. Unmistakably, they will. But ultimately, they'll shut up because they've had their chance and they blew it. And now there's a new ideology in town. It's called the restrainers. And now we're going to China, baby. And that's it. Don't forget also, yeah. That's it. We'll give you an in with the Zongezur. I mean, hey, what do you want from us? We even got you a second front with Zongezur. It's all there. To the extent you get your sniff again to the highest level of federal executive power, you might try to exploit this particular thing we left for you. But for now, shut up. That's it.
As I point out,
you'll see.
Very optimistic. And I hope you're right. We'll see. You're very optimistic. I don't think the U.S. gives up that quickly.
Trump needs this. Trump needs this, and the blob. Yeah, he needs it. Politically, he needs it because he's got nothing right now after 7 months. What does he have? And he's being dodged by the Epstein file. He's getting a respite now because the Congress is in recess. But as soon as Congress comes back to business in September, it's hell. All hell is going to come down on him.
The
so he needs to have something to
No, go ahead, listen.
No, he needs something to basically soothe his base, because the midterms are coming. I don't think Vance is looking too favorably, having to look for because the electoral campaign for 2028 is going to start really early this time around. Trump is not coming back. He's too old, and he's not constitutionally allowed to run again. And he's done. He's done. It's now we have to already start thinking about what comes after Trump. And I would say, if I was Russia and I understand what Vance is all about, what interest he represents, I would want him to, I would not look down on him being the next president for the next 8 years after that. Yeah.
It'd be funny if Putin had the Epstein files. He just comes and says,
yeah, he has to deal with that, but I think that's going to dodge him unless he somehow can rekindle Russiagate. Don't forget about Russiagate. Russiagate's got a lot of legs.
No, that's
the problem. Is you
dead.
I don't know. I mean, he won't be going after the top tier of the people behind it, and we know who they are. Although he might go after the former heads of agencies, the Clappers, Brennan, and Comey. Yeah, those people are not. They committed perjury times and times again. The Lisa Page, the Peter Strzok's, all those people. There's a lot to feed the cable network for the next 3.5 years. He'll do a reverse of what they did to him in the first time. But he's got to kill that Epstein thing, because already within his own base, within his own party, they are warning him not to make a deal with Ghislaine Maxwell.
Well, because it comes across as he's a pedophile, and they can't believe anything she says because you're making a deal with the person who knows.
Who's technically an accomplice of the perv in chief. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
She procured him the girls. Yes.
Right. Yeah. It's like, what is he going to do? Come out and says, well, we gave her a pardon, but she's being completely honest, and my name is not on the list.
Yeah. It's like, you said there was no list.
Right.
You said there was no list.
It's like, come on. It's like, that's not gonna, nobody's going to buy that, right? Like, there's no way that works. It's like, yeah, you can trust her. She's totally honest now, even though we gave her pardon. She's been out of jail. It's like, yeah, okay.
And then the pardon on top of it,
a pardon on top. So
she's not going to ask anything less than that, right? If she starts going that way.
25 years or something like that, 50 years?
20.
Even if she has to wait 3 years after Trump leaves.
I mean, she might serve 1/3 of that, right? I mean, you have reduction of sentencing.
Exactly.
So she would be like 21, about 7 years. She's been in jail since 2020. That's already been 5 years, because time served leading up to the trial, right?
That's brutal.
So she could still be looking at 3 to 4 years. Maybe the people within Trump's camp are telling him, listen, all things taken together into consideration, she'll be eligible for parole in 5 years tops. Would you politically,
if she comes out with a list and stays
without the pardon, she'll be eligible. Within 5 years' time, she'll be eligible. Yes.
Oh, I see what you mean. Even if she doesn't get it, she's still eligible to get out.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. She hasn't killed anybody.
It's almost worse. I mean, we're talking about pedophilia, a large number of kids who they think that she was an apex pedophile. So it kind of looks bad. I have a hard time believing they're going to.
Yeah, but the problem is politically, we have a guy who says there was no list. So it's difficult to maintain her in jail, right? I mean, this remains a problem, legally speaking. How can you sentence someone? I mean, there's a problem here on its face. If I'm a lawyer, I'm going to be fighting this to reopen the case.
Yeah.
Sorry, I want a new trial. Yes.
Yeah, I suppose, and say I want everything to come out. And if you're Trump, and you might say, okay, I need her to shut up.
Then through a new trial, she can get acquitted. See, there's many ways to get it done. Trust our friend in Langley's. They know what they're doing. They can lean on any kind of federal judge for raison d'etat.
Arno, man, thank you for this. I appreciate this. You gave me a more optimistic view of this thing, because I got to be honest, my view on this is kind of dark. But we'll see. I hope I'm wrong. I actually do hope I'm wrong. I'm sick of this war. These people are being killed for no reason.
No, the problem is all the provocations that made Jalen the road to somehow a settlement of the situation.
Yeah.
And that long, it's still pretty long. Let's make no mistake about it. And this Alaska meeting is only but the first stone. It's going to take a few more meetings after that to hammer out, and then a lot of massaging in public opinion domestically. So there's plenty of room left for provocation. I heard yesterday they were trying to target the maternity in Kramatorsk to blame the Russians.
Right.
There's a lot more things they could do. I mean, those people they're derelict.
Butcher.
They could try to bomb the NPP in Zaporozhye. Who knows?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of preempting threats at the intelligence, military intelligence level. They have to really be on their best performance, because this is really the danger zone now.
Arno Dele, thank you, my man. I always appreciate these conversations. I really do. Arnaud Dele is an author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. That's probably why you're gray on this stuff. It's like, yeah, you got to be more gray. You can't be zeros and ones. If you're like zeros and ones, it's like these people are lunatics. His latest
book, black and white. No, in geopolitics, never black and white.
In law, yeah. His book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of America's Political Consensus. You have a fantastic rest of your day, okay? Thank you for this.
Thank you, Jamal. See you soon.
Bye-bye. All right. We have come to the end. Let's see. Who do we have? We have a new member. Hot damn. Michael Sherry. Michael Sherry became a YouTube member. Well, welcome to the family, Michael Sherry. Thank you for joining me, honestly. And we have a chat. What is this called? Wassim. What was it? Wassim. I think this is Garani. Hey, Jamal, someone mentioned Mohammed O.D. on an interview. Your choice, but suppose al-Jilani and whitewashes crimes of Latakia as being a sadist. Dude, I have no interest in having a conversation with somebody who thinks Jelani is fantastic. Meaning, I have no issue with platforming this guy. Mention Mahmoud, AD. I just want to make sure I read it. To interview your choice, but he supports Al Jilani and why? Yeah, I have no interest in talking to him. No interest. I'll leave that up to the Cenk Uygurs of the world, who has no issue in getting into political fights and calling people baboons. I don't have any interest. Otherwise, do not pretend to oppose them or morally superior. Oh God, who's fighting? What is this? Would anyone else be impressed to learn Victoria Nuland is of Ukrainian heritage? Well, if that is true, she has torched them like nobody's business. Gosh, he's fucked them over if that's true. Is Jamal dyslexic? I was having a hard time seeing it, that's all. My computer is far back. Did I get it wrong? I got it wrong? Hey, Jamal, someone mentioned Mahmoud O.D. I think this is O.D. To interviewee. I mean, it's not me being dyslexic. It's put weirdly. Your choice, but he supports Al Jilani and whitewashed. See, this is wished crimes on Latakia as being a sadist. Yeah, that's not me being dyslexic. That is just, I'm not going to trash the writing. I thank you and appreciate you for it. But that's not me being dyslexic. That's my point. What is this? Savage work to sacrifice your own people for nothing. I know, right? That's hardcore. That is hardcore. That's what I mean. If she's partially Ukrainian, that is brutal. That is brutal. That was not true about my mood. What the fuck? I didn't say it. Somebody else said it. I pointed out. I don't know who he is. Dashil GR. That is not true. What the fuck? Again, I know nothing about my mood. So this is not me making a this is not me making an assessment one way or the other. I don't know. A speech impediment. It's a bit like that said my soul to, sold my soul to Santa or what? Victoria Nuland's family heritage is Jewish with roots in Eastern Europe. Her father, Sherwin B. Newland, was born Sherpsel Bell or what? Nudelman. Okay. Fair enough. Jamal, there's an Indian guest that will give their perspective. You can bring them onto the audience, of course. Who was it? Just send me an email. Just send me an email. Mahmoud Odi does not support Jelani. He is for Iran. Okay. Now I am confused because I don't know the person. And so there is now contradictory information that you expect me to learn on the fly. I will look them up. I'll look them up because that's the only way I can figure it out because I'm getting two very different ideas. And to be fair, I got to be honest with you. There are people who would say, this person supports this. And they don't support it at all. So I'll check it out. He did support Jelani. Okay, here we are. He did support Jelani at least at the start of the regime. I stopped watching after that, but maybe he saw the light. I mean, honestly, why does he need to see the fucking light? Like, don't get me wrong. I don't think you've ever heard me rah-rah Assad. But you're damn sure not going to give me the rah-rah terrorists that are taking over a country. And with the U.S. effectively backing them, Israel effectively backing them, Turkey effectively backing them, and they're acting like this is love and light and this is democracy. And it's like, those are the same terrorists that were there once before murdering and ethnically cleansing people. Why does it take him a come to Jesus moment to be like, hey, they're ethnically cleansing people? I don't get that. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. We had to have backing pointed out. He had to have the backing pointed out. Okay, I don't know what that meant. We had a low amount of information and approached it from a religious angle at first. I see. How's it religious though? I mean, so yeah, how's it? I don't get that one. I don't get how that's religious. You have all sorts of religious communities that were under Assad. All sorts. Druze, Christians, Shia, Alawites, etc. Which of those religions did he not like? I hope you get my point. And again, I don't know, so take it with a grain of salt. Meaning if you have a country of, let's say, 15 religions, and you say, I am backing terrorists for religious reasons, that's a bit weird, right? Like, that's a little strange. It's like you have a cornucopia of religions that they accept, and yet you're backing maniacs, goons that don't have that level of acceptance. Which of the religions did you want to get rid of under Assad? But fair enough. I don't know. It's strange. And again, I don't know if that's true that they were supporting him for religious reasons because I don't know him. I'm just pointing out that if you're making the argument to me that he supported terrorists for religious reasons, it sounds like you were lunatics. It sounds like you were nuts. So, but I've been watching it in detail. He just initially supported it because he was a Muslim group and also had pro-resistance groups, but not much history on who was there. Dave Vader, I agree that is why. Okay, what did Dr. Vader? I agree that, but that's why I suggested him to Jamal to improve Jamal's show. I don't know if that improves the show, bringing on somebody who was a terrorist supporter. But I'd watched in detail, initially supported because it was Muslim group and he's pro-resistance groups, but he had not much history on who was there. Yeah, I have no want in platforming a terrorist. Don't take it wrong. Or somebody who's back a terrorist group. They have been going through and slaughtering women and children of one group after the next. And it's like, hey man, I just want to come on and defend that. Not so much. In the same way that I wouldn't platform, a Zionist defending murdering babies. Not going to support a terrorist doing the same. All right. I am going to end this. He's not a terrorist supporter. Dude, you just pointed out, that he was backing. Okay. Well, fair enough. No matter how bad, the United States back replacement is always worse. Yep, for decades or more, I don't think he defended today. Well, that's good that he's had a come to Jesus moment. That's good. So my mood is like an ISIS guy and only dislikes Jelani because he's not radical enough and deals with Israel. It's like, oh man. It's like, God, man. That's what actually, right? Like if you're making the argument to me that, well, he backed terrorists because he's religious. I was like, okay. Well, you had all sorts of religions under Assad. In fact, that was the key benefit of Assad, right? That he at the very least kept the beaches open. You can worship who you wanted to worship. So if you're telling me that he was religious and that's why you wanted to get rid of Assad, that's a bit weird. All right, I'm going to end this. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. You guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Have a good day, guys. Be safe, and to the degree that you can, be kind. Signing off.